waiting for technical issues to be resolved, I'll just, a little bit of housekeeping for the board members. Housekeeping is that you'll notice that you have tape over your mics. The mics are hot mics. If you have a side conversation or something you don't want on the public record, cover your mic, move your mic away from you. The purpose for doing this at this time is because we did not capture some board members' comments in discussion during a previous meeting. And so it's hard to capture if we don't have that mic on or in front of us and things of that nature. Okay. 1:02 p.m., March 11th, 2025. Good afternoon. We have a quorum of members present this afternoon, and the New York City Board of Correction, March 11th, 2025 meeting is now in session. Our first order of business is to vote on the agenda for today's meeting, which board members have received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the March 11th, 2025 meeting agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Does any member have edits or comments on the agenda? All in favor of approving the March 11th, 2025 meeting agenda?
Yes.
Aye.
Any objections? Hearing no objection, it is approved. Our second order of business is a vote on the draft minutes for the February 11th, 2025 board meeting, which board members have received. Will a board member move for a vote to approve the February 11th, 2025 board meeting minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Does any member have edits or comments on the minutes? All in favor of approving the February 11th, 2025 board meeting minutes, say aye.
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 Any objections? Hearing no objection, they are approved and duly ratified. PIC public comments. We will now hear pre-recorded anonymous public comment from people in custody. This will probably be about a 10-minute segment. There are 7 comments from PICs.
Hello, my name is. Hello, my name is. This calling is regarding challenging and reported notice of infraction written at 2/17/25 for upper OBCC by C. The notice of infraction is very vague and very misleading, to say the most. I would like to appear in court or an infraction or appearing or hearing infraction regarding this infraction because I was unable to report to the last notice of the hearing. It was very, very, very misleading. It says, quote, shows him as he was using the phone, and the injury report was generated by person in custody. very much find this to be very misleading. If you can review the cameras again and see that there was a visual restraint with controlling the distance between me and said person in custody after I hung up his phone. And noticeable, they had to help with the restraint. The inmates help with the restraint on him, not on me. And it says choke, and it's very, very vague and very misleading. Was it a full choke hold? Was it a headlock? No, there's a visible hand directly in front of him to say no longer proceed any further towards me. As the accuser, or I like to call it aggressor on my behalf, I would like to challenge this infraction, and I would like to have a hearing. Thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it. Please get back to me at your greatest convenience. Thank you very much.
Excuse me. This first PIC comment seemed a little bit, unaudible. Is this consistent with other PIC comments, or was this just, okay.
A unit and a few other units have a big game. Matter of within 2 weeks. Resignation papers, a city job, so I resign. It's delaying me. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is. The reason for this call is I'm currently facing some backlash or retaliation for 311 calls and complaints that I've been putting in concerning the law library, medical service, lack of mail. Calling now at this present time is because there's recently two thefts that took place here on Franklin Island back to back. I myself was in a situation where I had to stop another young lady flashing up another young lady just in November with more than 7 times. She flashed a young lady and I intervened to save someone's life. Now, I didn't receive an infraction, but I was called to a hearing for an infraction that I did not receive. My classification was raised from a 3 to a 13 so that I would be housed with women that are problematic. This is the retaliation for the phone call. I've also received a letter from the executive director of programs disbarring me from attending the visit. So, which means I won't be able to attend this program and I'll be rehoused due to retaliation for reporting some things that are taking place here in Pakistan that are just unjust and a violation of my constitutional rights. I have that right to be able to attend the library. I have that right to get mail more than once a week, and it's just inappropriate. So the people that are getting hurt here may just be getting hurt out of retaliation for reporting certain things that are going on here in Rikers Island. There's no reason for my classification to go from a 3 to a 13 overnight. There's simply no reason. And who did it? Because there's no classification officer that's here, that's assigned to the classification unit here at Rose and Center. So I was just reclassed overnight. On the 2nd, I was in classification of the 3, on the 3rd, while I was at court. I'm asking that someone look into the retaliation that's getting in the detaining here at Rikers Island and here in Rose and Center. I shouldn't be classed with higher classification.
Yes, hi, my name. We was recently moved from, and in the new housing area in 18 Upper A, the walls are very filthy and it's hard to breathe in here. They they cleaned the bottom, but they forgot about cleaning the walls on top, and it's very, very asbestos-like in here. So we would like we'll do it ourselves if we can, but someone to check that out and clean the tops for us would be excellent. Thank you so much.
Call it. I'm an MA in correction. Brackets down there. I'm calling in reference to the petitions in the bathroom in 18 Upper B. This is ridiculous that we moved in here. It's the same thing in the previous house we was in. There's no petition separating us from one another, and I feel very uncomfortable about using the restroom because of the petition not being there. I think that we should have some type of privacy within using the restroom, you know, from even corrections as well as other inmates.
Hi, my name is. My complaint is in regards to the laundry. The PICs, they have no access to wash laundry every day. That should be laundered by the facility. Dust in the ceilings, mold. The mattresses are extremely thin. It feels like you're sleeping on the bed frame. When it rains, it comes through the ceiling. So basically the ceiling leaks when it rains. And nothing is being done about any of these issues.
My complaint is on February 10th, I was not brought to court. I was left in the basement. So I never got upstairs to see the judge. I was anxious to see someone was acting up in this case that I was in. They didn't get me, the person out, so I could be safe. They just left their post to the phone would ring and no one would answer. And they left me there. And basically, I never got up to court where I could have had my, basically I was extradited on the 11th day, not the 10th. And I also voluntarily surrendered. I wanted the judge to hear this and to see my paperwork that related to it to relieve my remand so I wouldn't illegally be being held at Rikers. Instead, they did not let me go upstairs. And also, I wanted to ask for a 7:30 hearing, which I was completely denied my due process for that, and to redo a 7:30 evaluation that had expired. We never got to get up to do this. Instead, the bus driver, imagine the bus driver tells you you're committed to the hospital, no more court date. So I had one get this, and it didn't get done. And so basically, I'm remanded here. I'm hearing from people like Matthias Smith-Bees, a regular person at in this mental ward I'm in. It's 1 East B. Basically, she's saying it could be months. Where said it could be years. Oh, there's a lawsuit, though. I'm not about getting a lawsuit. I'm about the situation that they have to read the law 7:30. I know they want to make money for the island. They're not supposed to have anyone here that is waiting to go to the hospital. If they don't have a hospital bed ready, the court knows this. They don't make money for the jail boarding people here illegally without charges at this point. What they do is they wait till the hospital bed is ready and they ship them right out. But 7:30 law, they're violating the Queen Supreme Court. The jail definitely is. They're fully aware of the million message. Everyone ignores it. To basically force me here to make money. And then Brian Fuchs, the mental health coordinator, he decides to hand me 3 hard drugs and say, well, I guess sleep all day. Now, in 5 minutes, everyone in wellness and mental health leaves you off.
Chair Sampson, is there any way that we can get written transcripts of these calls? Because they're very, very hard to understand, or at least access to the full recording.
I'll make sure that we get full written transcripts of each PIC comments for today's meeting.
Chair, if I may, just, I don't know who's doing the transcripts, but I noticed, and several of us did, that in many instances they were just wrong. So I don't know if there's an ability to cross-reference like what's being said. I noticed it, and I don't know if it's being done by the staff or if it's like a program, but.
It looks like it's AI generated.
Yeah, and it just seems a lot of errors in it that we noticed. So just as that's being done, if it's manual, that would be better probably.
Yes,
Yeah.
we'll revisit these 7 comments. I think that it's only appropriate to the council and to the vice chair that we get accurate comments from PICs regarding their concerns. And that's why after the first PIC comment, I asked, is it audible or is it going to be consistent in this manner? I don't find that many of the comments were audible or able to understand what PICs were addressing. So we will get transcripts, full transcripts. Thank you. Can you hear me now? Okay. I'd like to thank all who left public comments on our dedicated lines for people in custody. And again, we will make sure that your comments are fully reflected in the minutes and in the notes to the department. At this time, I'll turn it over to Jasmine, our Executive Director, for updates.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Since the board's February meeting, there have been 2 deaths in DOC custody. We extend our condolences to the families and loved ones of Ramel Powell and Terrence Moore. Mr. Powell, age 38, died in OBCC on February 19, 2025. Mr. Powell was found unresponsive in his cell by DOC staff at approximately 1:37 a.m. Mr. Moore, age 55, died in a court cell at Manhattan Supreme Court on February 24, 2025. Both causes of death are currently pending confirmation from the Office of the Chief Medical Examiner. As with all deaths in custody, the board is actively investigating and will issue a public report on its findings. Next, we share our deepest condolences with the families of department staff who have passed since the board's February meeting. The staff who have passed are retired Officer Henry Fogel, retired Officer Peter Charles Jr., retired Officer George H. Cotty, retired Officer Mark Anthony Jones, retired Officer William Fontaine, retired Officer Faye L. Woods, and retired Captain Dominic Nocera. Regarding census data, as of March 10, 2025, there were approximately 6,966 individuals in department custody, which is a 2.68% increase from last month. Broken down by facility, as of March 10th, in the Bellevue Hospital Prison Ward, 50 individuals in custody. Elmhurst Hospital Prison Ward, 10. EMTC, 1,702. GRVC, 892. NIC, 264. OBCC, 1,575. RESH, 177. RMSC, 416. RNDC, 1,137. And West Facility, 738. Next, I have a few notes about the items on today's agenda. The board will consider a request from the department to renew a limited 4-month variance suspending the board's overcrowding minimum standards in certain housing areas in OBCC. Although the West Facility Annex and EMTC were not included in the department's initial variance request to the department has increased the beds at standard within each of those facilities to more than the maximum 50 allowed for detainees in a dormitory unit, in violation of the board's minimum standards. It is staff's understanding that the department will today seek to renew the 4-month limited overcrowding variance applied to OBCC, in addition to requesting variances for the facilities that are currently not in compliance with the board's overcrowding minimum standards, West Facility Annex and EMTC. Regarding the SMU, board staff have continually audited the Special Management Unit since it opened on February 6, 2025, to evaluate DOC's compliance with Directive Number 4492, which outlines the policies and procedures governing the unit. Based on our review of SMU's policies, visits to the unit, and interviews with persons in custody and uniformed staff, concerns remain about the unit's operations and its impact on the incarcerated population. In addition to the department's failure to comply with several of the board's minimum standards upon opening the SMU, board staff have observed significant inconsistencies between Directive 4492 and the operation of the unit. Based on board staff's continued observations, concerns remain in the following areas: restraints, lockout time, law library, recreation, religious services, telephones, access to medical, access to mental health, correspondence and packages, visits, personal hygiene, staff training, due process, and support services plan. Specifically, regarding religious services, for the first 4 weeks after the SMU opened, persons in custody had not been escorted to the mosque on Fridays for congregate Juma services. After the board notified the department of the violation of minimum standard 1-07 regarding congregate religious services, the department on March 7th allowed individuals to attend Muslim services in the OBCC mosque for the first time since the SMU opened. And we look forward to hearing the department's plan for continued compliance with the religious services minimum standard, as well as the department's plans for addressing the board's ongoing concerns regarding the SMU. Regarding the sick call agenda item, we look forward to hearing what progress the department has made in developing a system that tracks unscheduled visits, that is, sick call visits that do not rely on the health triage line. And that concludes the BOC staff's updates. I'll turn it over to Chair Sampson for remarks on the department's overcrowding variance request.
Thank you, Executive Director Jasmine. Just brief remarks. I'd like to say that I find it troubling that the department proceeded with adding beds above the allowable limit in the board's minimum standards without first seeking a variance from the board. The board standards are in place to keep people who live and work in the jail safe and to promote humane conditions. Pursuant to the minimum standards 1-15, the department must submit a new variance request for each facility where they determine that the full compliance with the board's overcrowded minimum standard cannot be achieved for a specified period. That said, I will now turn it over to DOC to present their variance request, followed by public comments on the variance request and a board vote.
Chair,
Yes.
I'd just like to add in support of your comments. The department is well aware that they're supposed to ask the board.
Bobby, I would like to give the department an opportunity. You'll have a chance to
Well, I don't know how you're scheduling, organizing the meeting. I mean,
okay.
What's the problem with me talking?
You'll have time. I want the department to respond now, and then you can get to the department and share your concerns.
Good afternoon, members of the board.
Good afternoon.
My name is Raymond Sanchez. I am the Assistant Deputy Warden of the Custody Management Centralized Movement Unit. Today, the department is seeking a renewal of the variance granted at the November 2024 meeting from BOC minimum standards regarding overcrowding. Standards, Section 1 of 04, Section C2, 1 of 04, C3, 1 of 04, C5, Roman numeral 1, or to run 4 months. The department's current population recorded today at 6,951 anticipates a continued rise in population through the coming weeks. As the board is aware, the New York State Department of Corrections and Community Supervision is temporarily unable to accept persons in custody from local correctional facilities who are deemed state-ready. As of today, March 11, 2025, there were 344 persons in custody currently in the department who will remain under the department's supervision until DOCS begins accepting new admissions. This number will continue to grow until DOCS begins accepting new admissions. Just as of yesterday, we learned DOCS intake new acceptance date has been delayed from March 27, 2025 until March 31st, 2025. Whether DOCS would accept all pending state-ready individuals at once or slowly over time, it has yet to be determined. We learned that the strike is no longer in place. However, DOCS let go over 2,000 staff members. The rising census in the New York City jails and inability to transfer out individuals who are state-ready coupled with the department's staffing crisis demands close attention and continued flexibility in managing resources effectively. For your awareness, under our current commissioner, we have been utilizing our 6A program. And up to this date, the department has discharged a total of 81 individuals under the 6A program. Since we were granted this variance in November of 2024, the department has installed an additional 100 beds in OBCC. The department also received approval from the SCOC to install an additional 72 beds in the West Facility Annex dorms. As we previously indicated in Phase 2 of our initial variance request, the department recognizes that it was not made clear in our initial request that we also required these additional beds in the West Facility Annex dorms. The department requires this additional bed space in the West Facility Annex dorm as part of the variance renewal request today. Additionally, the department houses more than 50 persons in custody in more than 20 dormitories in our EMTC facility. Since EMTC once operated as a facility for census individuals, the areas are currently equipped with 60 beds per the BOC minimum standards. The department requires these additional beds in order to meet our responsibility to move persons in custody. Moving persons in custody out of the intake and into these housing areas to prevent 24 hours of violations, as individuals who are new admissions must be housed within 24 hours. We are working with SCOC at this time to ensure the maximum facility capacity, referred to as MFC, reflects the 60 beds across all EMTC dorms. This additional bed space at EMTC should also be considered as part of this this variance renewal. To be clear, the increased capacity in the OBCC dorms, West Facility Annex dorms, and EMTC dorms all reflect BOC minimum standards for overcrowding. Despite these helpful gains in bed space, the need for additional bed space and continued flexibility will continue. The department continues to work towards other phases included in our initial plan to the board, which include maximizing bed space to prioritize our mental observation beds. We will keep the board updated as we complete the rest of the phases. Importantly, we have evaluated the data in which has demonstrated that the areas that has been overcrowded have not experienced an increased rate of violence. In fact, since December to present, violence has decreased department-wide, and the specific housing areas in questions are no different. We will continue to prioritize the stability and safety of these individuals in our care. The department respectfully asks the board to consider a 4-month renewal of this variance to include OBCC, in addition EMTC and the West Facility dorms. The department will continue to assess all options for increasing bed space safely and efficiently. Thank you. I welcome any questions from the board.
Thank you. Board Member Cohen.
First, the board never approved 60 beds for EMTC. It was not. It has 60 beds, but many years ago, the board said you could only have 50 people in those dormitories. So your use of 60 is not based upon our standard. It's based upon your overcrowding. I think that the relationship between the state problem right now of not being able to admit people because of a job action by the union explains 300 beds. It doesn't explain thousands of beds. You had 3,500 people in the facility in 1970. Now you have 7,000, and only 300 of them are related to the state issue. You clearly have a plan to increase the number of people that are being incarcerated. That's inconsistent with the department's commitment to reduce the population to be sufficient for the new jails and to close down Rikers Island. You want to respond?
Yeah, I mean, I think we talked about this offline at one time when we had a meeting. The people that come into our custody are not at our behest. We don't have control over state courts and who comes to the jails. We have only 500, approximately hovering, sentenced population, which, by the way, I would say the sentenced population that we're dealing with now is considerably different, because I know this question will come up later, than was the case in 2020. Were you going to ask about 6A?
Yes.
All right, so this commissioner has released more people, I think we're up to 85 now, or 86, pursuant to 6A, than both the previous two commissioners combined. That being said, what was done in 2020 is different than what's happening now. I reviewed personally with the first deputy commissioner and the commissioner herself some of who we have in custody for sentenced individuals. The charges that we're seeing include robbery, burglary, CPW with a weapon, multiple missed court appearances. We don't have turnstile jumpers or pickpockets in our custody right now. So that addresses that aspect. With respect to the growing population, again, whether we want to, if this is the forum to have a conversation about the criminal justice system, I'm more than happy to stand here and do that. But the reality of why the population is increasing is because we have a pre-trial detention population that's immense. And if you go onto any of the web crim court appearance type things, every single one of the adjournments that you see for most of these individuals, 70% of which are serious violent felony offenses, are because of discovery compliance. Okay, so that's what's delaying these cases. We've engaged with our external partners at OCA. We've engaged with MOCJ within the city to do our best internally as to how we can reduce the population. But the fact remains that the people in the Department of Correction, ourselves, and whenever we come here to have answers, I know you ask this question consistently, we just don't have the control. We have a very limited ability to release people. That's pursuant to the sentence population. This commissioner has used it robustly, but we are facing, public consideration. If we want to release people who are charged with criminal possession of a weapon, a gun, and robbery pursuant to a work release program, I don't know. I've worked in criminal justice and law enforcement my entire career for 26 years. I don't know that I'm comfortable with that. But where we can use it and apply it, we have. But to continually have the Department of Correction up here talking about the population that comes from state courts is unfair. We have to manage who we have, and that's where we are.
Can I continue?
What?
I just.
You have a follow-up?
Well, I asked for the answer to the question and stopped continuing my discussion. It's not a follow-up.
Go ahead and continue.
I understand that those 300 people are not your control. I'm not talking about that. You know, robust 70 out of 300, that's a characteristic that I might or might not agree with. But the decision to arrest people and place high bail on them so they end up in your facility is, of course, not something that the department has complete control of. But the fact that it was down to 3,500 4 years ago shows that when you work together with the judges, with the DAs, you can reduce the population substantially. And the fact that the fact that you mentioned that the discovery is not available and people's cases are not continuing because someone is not providing the stuff necessary, that's what you said, right? I mean,
No, that's not what I said, but go ahead.
Oh, isn't it?
I'll clarify. Go ahead.
Is that true?
Is what true?
That discovery material is being delayed?
No, there's all kinds of discovery issues. Again, this is expanding the criminal justice discussion well beyond probably what this forum should be for. But nonetheless, since 2019, if you talk to any district attorney, discovery has been a problem. We're not talking about what's available to the people that are in our custody. This is a delay for people who are out of custody. And if you saw recently, the Queens District Attorney just said that they had to dismiss, because of discovery issues, 11,000 cases in 2024. And all 5 of our district attorneys appeared up in Albany with Governor Hochul to talk about discovery reform and what's needed to adjust this. To, 1, accelerate these cases, and then 2, to not have to dismiss the other misdemeanors, which again is, a more broader criminal justice discussion. But you also mentioned that you should work with courts and otherwise. I don't disagree. But this is not part of the forum here. This is not what the Department of Correction does. We work where we can, when we can. We engage in whatever working groups we have. But the reality of the situation is the population, the census, is mostly, except, and by the way, the 300 people in 6A are separate, right? The 300 people, we can't. They're state sentenced. Right. They're just awaiting. What I'm talking about, the 500 people that are city sentenced, is where we use that. So we've got 83 and we hover around 500. That's not a bad proportion of 6A releases. I mean, and again, it far exceeds our previous, this commissioner's previous 2 predecessors. But nonetheless, I aver and I will maintain that this population and what we're doing, while I'm certainly happy to have a conversation, to have it raised here and to continually answer these questions is unproductive and quite honestly unfair. Because again, it is out of our control. We're not out in the streets picking anyone up. This is a citywide discussion that you're more than welcome to have, but to bring it here to us is just, again, it seems unproductive in the concept of what we need to be doing.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to move on, Board Member Cohen. Vice Chair Skip.
Thank you. So I agree that this is not the forum for that. I fully understand that the cooperating agreement and how people are shuttled through the system, and you're frequently the last stop and get what you get, you know, and there's nothing you can do about that. What I want to concentrate on is what are you doing on your parcel of land? I have 2 questions. How many facilities are currently closed?
Yes, I don't have that actual information at this time.
Unrighteous?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm sorry, we're not being coy, we're just trying, I mean, it's at least 3 major facilities, right? And then some other smaller borough-based ones.
Okay, so I'm confused why you don't have that at your fingertips, because that's part of what you govern. I'm also confused as to why there is an overcrowding issue, and I get that, and it's not entirely your fault, and I get that. But what are you doing with what you have to alleviate So my second question is, what is the plan moving forward to open some of these closed spaces that you already have to help alleviate overcrowding due to situations beyond your control?
I mean, there's a couple of pieces to that. One is we are bound by, the borough-based jails program. So these facilities were closed and have not been, quite candidly, updated to be immediately occupied for obvious reasons, because that costs money. That would be something that we would have to be spending money on to have them available to be housed when we still need the money and we have no capital budget. We talked about this on Friday with the city council. We don't have capital budget to keep improvements up on the facilities that we have in use. In addition to that, as we've also talked about here, which is part of the need for why we're asking for a variance, is we have a staffing crisis. I mean, that's been going on. If you bear with me, I'll pull up the numbers just as, a point of reference. In 2019, there were 10,577 correction officers that were available to work. I mean, again, some with sick or otherwise, but that's the head count. Then, of course, because of the borough-based jails, we had a hiring freeze for several years. As of 2025, we have 5,946 available. That's of February of this year. So you're talking about, almost a 5,000-person reduction in the staff. So every time we contemplate opening up a new housing area, that doesn't just mean we have space available, go ahead, let's move them in. We have to move staff, where, we have dealings with the monitor and unstaffed posts that we have to be, mindful of. That's a safety and security concern. And every time we open up a new facility, it's not just the people who are standing in the housing areas, right? We have to have programming services. We have to have escorts. We have to have all these different types of things that would require, kind of it builds upon itself the staffing needs. So all of these things are considered. We talk about it, but the unfortunate circumstances, we can't just open a building, move people in, and then it's kind of dispersed out because of all these reasons. One, they're not in the state and the condition to be able to do that. And second, the staffing needs that we are now struggling with are real and significant.
And I understand that. I still think that where there's a will, there's a way. And instead of minimizing safety concerns, that this should be an avenue that you're aggressively pursuing,
If you have thoughts to that, we welcome it. Because, again, any collaboration that we could do to try to figure out how to manage the population and keep the safety concerns, we're willing. You guys have access to the jails, we'll have you in, we'll work with you on it, but this is our reality right now.
Thank you. I'm going to take you up on that.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you, Chair. Vice Chair. Sorry.
1 second, please. General Counsel Conroy.
Yes, sir.
At a previous board meeting, just in follow-up to Vice Chair Skip, there was a question about your closed facilities in turnover of those facilities. I think it was to the controller, or my recollection is not clear.
Yeah, it's DCAS.
To DCAS?
Deputy Administrative Services. What does DCAS stand for? But whatever it is, DCAS.
Okay, to DCAS.
Yeah, Department of Citywide.
What is the plan? Is there a plan? Because from hearing your statements, that those closed facilities based on staffing, facilities conditions, budgets, I think you listed 4 different items. What is the plan to deal with those closed facilities?
Well, we have communications with DCAS and city agencies all the time just about this point. The council is something that, they've asked us about it. I think in some of the facilities, we actually still have uses of them. I think in AMKC, we have the kitchen. So, unfortunately, we do use some of the portions of the facility which prohibit full turning over of it, but that's a citywide discussion. We've only transferred over a small portion of land, so they're still there, but again, they're not in use except for some portions of some of the buildings.
Just in follow-up, that's a plan that I think I would like to see, just because you alluded to it as, a major argument on.
I'm not understanding what the argument is with respect to, like the transfer of land to DCAS and the population.
Is there a plan?
No, but I don't understand how the correlation is with what you're asking.
Well,
One is separate from the other. I don't know is the plan talking about transferring the land, or is it about opening the facilities?
It's about both, really. I mean, it's really about both.
But one is not dispositive of the other, I don't think.
but it would be helpful to this board if we know what your plan is with the closed facilities.
We'll take it back to the people that handle that. Oh, I'm sorry.
So just to clarify, so the law that was part of the BBJ required that the city as a whole evaluates parcels of land on Rikers Island twice a year. Every year we've been doing that, having those conversations of what parcel of land we can give up. I think we're at an impasse where there are no parcels of land other than what we've given up, as well as JATC right now on Rikers Island that has been fully relinquished to DCAS. Any other parcel of land that we would have to consider would require facilities that are currently operational. And if you take a look at the law, it does exclude that if there are any parcels of land that are in use by PICs or operational to DOC, that probably should not be considered at that time. So this is an ongoing discussion, but to connect everything together, the BBJ plan, the relinquishing of jails, as well as the decrease in the population was all supposed to happen in tandem to come forward, to make the BBJ plan come to fruition. So it's a constant conversation, but again, I think to the GC's point, the impasse we're at right now is that the census is going up, and it's just kind of where we are right now.
Okay, but that was very helpful. We'll move on. Board Member Felipe?
Thank you.
And then Board Member Jude. and then Dr.
I think this question will be for you, General Counsel. Who made the decision of creating SMU?
I mean, it was collaborative. I mean, I don't know, like,
We'll hold off on that question.
oh, okay.
We want to stay on the overcrowding right now.
Well, okay. I mean, what I really want to get a sense of who makes the decisions of like opening the SMU or opening these new beds that you open without talking to us.
I mean,
Who made that
without
decision?
talking to you, I don't know that that's,
Yeah, I mean,
again.
you know, beds were open without actually anything being submitted to the Board of Corrections.
The MTC West facility.
Well, you know, again.
And last month when we were talking about the SMU facilities, you guys were very clear that you actually have been in conversation with ACOC for a while.
Right.
Until then, eventually you came to talk to us. So who makes the decision on who you talk to first?
So I think that's just a collaboration, right?
Okay.
You have a whole group of people here over 4 aisles. Most of it, some of our executive staff is not here. I mean, that's, you know, it's an ongoing, I mean, do you want me to answer? It's an ongoing process with respect to, again, what we're doing and how we manage jails. It's not, everyone here knows, it's not an easy process. But with respect to, you know, again, the variances. So EMTC, you're right about the minimum standard, except as Deb Sanchez had said, that was initially for sentenced individuals. So when we talk about that, I don't think there was ever a variance. It was designated as sentenced individuals, so that's why the 60 beds were there. You're right, though, that there was no variance for that portion of it. But I would just also say, you know, we've messaged this to the board offline prior to this. The previous variance, and nobody's trying to be coy here. You know, again, we're talking about these global.
It feels like it. I mean, if it
I don't know why you
once,
think that.
Once, if it happened twice, it feels cool.
Yeah, but when we gave the letter regarding the last variance, we laid out a phased approach, right? We didn't mention West Facility, that acknowledged that entirely, but we did talk about what we plan to do as a more comprehensive thing than we just need bed space here in this place. When the variance was issued, and again, we've talked about this offline, the variance was granted, there were no limitations or conditions put on it. I don't think the minimum standards require that we specify and only ask for a variance. We ask for a variance from the standard, not from the facility. So it was our, impression that once the variance was granted without the limitations, that encompassed these things. But again, this is now why we're here. We're more than willing to share it, and we know going forward that that's how it's going to be.
And again, you know, the Board of Corrections has an office inside Rikers. We know you, you know us. You don't have to go to Albany. You don't have to talk to other people. I mean, we are not being informed about decisions you make. And we are not even being consulted about decisions you want to make. I mean, it would be so much easier to try to figure out what we expect under the variance if you actually were going to talk to the staff beforehand. You're doing that with other agencies. Do it with the Board of Corrections.
Yeah, I think we've had conversations regarding the variances. Again, as this came up and we learned the board's position on what the previous variance was, we amended our application today to reflect that it should be facility by facility. And that's what we're here to do. So again, just with everything, it's a learning process, right? We're here to talk about it. I had a conversation this morning with your council. You know, I said, I'm here, let's have these open dialogues and forums, and we'll be happy to do that. But again, it's a difference of interpretation in some aspects, and in some, right.
It's twice.
Well, twice, there's a lot of decisions that are made in the department, on a daily basis, and then we come here monthly to talk about them. So, it's not, it happens that they compounded on each other one right after, and I appreciate that aspect.
Your letter said we were
Hold
going to
on,
expand.
hold on one second, Board Member Cohen. Board Member Jude?
Yeah, I just had a quick question. A $5,000 shortfall in terms of correction officers presents a tremendous burden on the department. In terms of the new media campaign that was implemented, has there been signs of fruition?
We have a graduating class of about 109 that's coming out this month. Yeah, this month is graduating, so that's a help. As you know, in our most recent, well, maybe as you don't know, but in our most recent budget, we were allotted $4 million for recruitment campaigns. And as the commissioner represented to the city council on Friday, there's been I think a 33% increase in the amount of people who have signed up to take the correctional exam, which is, I think we went from 2,000 to 3,000 or somewhere around those numbers. So that's encouraging from that standpoint. And then again, we're going to continue these recruitment campaigns and work with DCAS on the public safety test to try to, look at a number of ways and youth programs to try to get people to, see what this job is about and increase the, the population of correction officers.
Board Member Cohen?
In your letter to us, you said that you were increasing the beds in the MTC and West facility without asking us. You're not asking for a variance, maybe you are doing that right now, but you did not ask for a variance for anything other than OBCC.
In the initial one, you mean?
Yeah.
And the one in the fall?
No, this last one also. It just says you have a plan, but you didn't ask for a variance.
I wasn't in part of the preparing for that, but I don't know if that's the
Well, that's
case.
what we're talking about.
Hi, I just want to be fully transparent and kind of make this abundantly clear. I'm sorry we didn't specify in the initial letter that West facility should have been included in the initial variance request. I think we acknowledged that via email. Here we are today, and we said we need a renewal for OBCC. We recognize that we also need a variance request for EMTC as well, and now we're actually including West facility. So I hear you, Dr. Cohen. I don't know if it's going to be productive to keep going back and forth. We're not trying to scapegoat the board's rules. We're just trying to make it very clear is that we're asking for a renewal for OBCC. We're including EMTC, which I think the board had acknowledged at the meeting from November, probably what should have been included, but here's what we're doing now. And now we're actually adding West facility as well. The reason why we went to SCOC is because those housing units required construction. And I'm not the SCOC group, so I don't know the technical ways of their oversight, but that's why it was referenced in the initial letter. But it should have been included that we also needed a variance for West facility as well back in November. But we are including today that we need a renewal for the variance for overcrowding for OBCC, inclusive of EMTC as well as West facility for the next 4 months. At this point, it's just the math, folks. It's just the math. The census is going up, and we have a responsibility to make sure everyone that comes into our custody has a bed.
Yes, and you should work with the Board of Corrections to make that happen.
100%, and I mean that wholeheartedly,
But
Felipe.
it's not the
So if we
SCOC.
did not specify it in the initial letter, we're correcting that now.
Yes, could you please state your name and position for the record?
James Boyd, Deputy Commissioner for Strategic Operations. Sorry about that, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Boyd. The population of the Department of Correction has been 20,000. It was 20,000 20 years ago. It was 3,500 5 years ago. It's almost 7,000 today. It was 5,000 about a year ago. What are your plans? And why it sounds like you're making plans to overcrowd the existing facilities, which are not, and you say you don't have any officers. I don't think you have a responsibility to run an organization which is incapable of providing the safety that you're saying that you need without our permission and without a plan for staffing it. Overcrowding is not an option.
I appreciate your point, but this is, what is the alternative? I mean, we plan every day. We move our staff accordingly. We've had conversations about staffing models, right? Overtime usage. you know, do you want us to reopen a facility? I don't think we
I don't want
can.
you to reopen a facility.
But this is what I mean, the chair does. So I appreciate the question, but it's really kind of like,
Well, I understand that there's nobody at City Hall for you to talk to. I don't know who's in charge, you know, in terms of.
well, we have citywide conversations all the time. Again, I said.
Is there a City Hall contact?
We sit with MOCJ weekly and we talk about methods, you know, they're in contact with the Office of Court Administration to talk about cases. We have a weekly kind of, you know, a working group with them to talk about ways that we could address the pre-trial population. So, I mean, it's an ongoing conversation. It's just right now, especially with what's going on at the state, that we're burdened with the, you know, to sentence individuals.
That's just 300. You're talking about increasing the population by many thousands. You say you're planning to increase the population by many thousands.
Nobody said that. Nobody said we're planning to increase the population, not at any point in this conversation. If that was said, then I'd like for someone to point it out and say where that was said by anyone. No one is planning to increase the population.
You're not talking with SCOC about increasing the population.
Increasing the population? No, nobody said that. We're talking about capacity issues and variances and things of what we're trying to do here. I don't think anybody is represented. We want a less population, unequivocally. Like, I mean, I don't know how to convey that more. We're just saying it's out of our control. I don't think anybody represented here that we want to increase the population. We're saying we have a staffing crisis. We have an unfortunate circumstance where the population is increasing. 300, despite you flying it away, is significant in every level because that requires staff to do that. Every single person that stays in our custody longer than they need to is an issue. And again, but it's out of our control in 99% of these circumstances, except for the limited 6A issue.
Well, that's why.
Dr. Cohen, I think, you know, I think we.
What do you think? What do you think, Chair?
We had a clear discussion on this, and I think that it's been articulated that our concern that the board has been sort of overlooked in a number of these matters by the department. I think that message was given across. So I'd like to move forward at this time.
We'll talk about when the population is 6,000 and 7,000 and 8,000. Looking forward to that. Not looking forward to that conversation.
Well, that's not, you know, we want to address the variance issue and to move forward for the sake of our agenda. Any other board members that have not spoken would like any comments before we move forward to the public?
Just in terms of clarification, and I think that Deputy Commissioner Boyd clarified it for the most part, and that is the application before the board today is a renewal of the variance with respect to OBCC and is a first-time application for a variance with respect to both the West Facility and the EMTC, because no variance was previously granted by this board with respect to either West Facility or EMTC. So we want to be clear on that what is before the board is renewal only with respect to OBCC, and now new applications for a variance with respect to those two facilities.
Thank you, Judge Garcia. Board Member Pitts, any thoughts or comments? Or?
No, not really, but I think perhaps we need to start thinking about how we can do incarceration using technology more than we are using it right now, because I don't foresee there being an expansion in the profession of being a a correction officer. That's just my thought at the moment that I'd like to share.
Thank you, Board Member Pitts. Okay, thank you, Department. As we'll Dr. Cohen?
Yeah. As you said, we were not asked to provide a variance. Generally, if the board has if the department has a variance, it should come to the board in advance and explain why it needs to have this variance, which you haven't done. You're just saying you've already done it. You say you spoke to the State Commissioner on Corrections, which doesn't have anything to do with the ability for you to increase population. They cannot say you can increase the population, only we can.
Okay.
And
Thank you,
They
Dr.
were
Cohen.
limited, it's already.
Thank you, Dr.
If
Cohen.
they made a mistake,
We're going to move forward now, board members. We will now hear public comment on the department's variance requests. Each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. Thank you very much, Deputy Warden. As a reminder, we will hold a general public comment session towards the end of the meeting as well. You may also submit written comments.
The first speaker is Ryan Aquaoda.
Good afternoon, Board of Correction. Thank you for this opportunity to provide comments on this variance request from the Department of Correction. My name's Ryan Aquata. I work with Freedom Agenda, which is a member-led project at the Urban Justice Center. Our members are New Yorkers who have been detained on Rikers or who have loved ones who are or have been detained there. Some of our members have lost loved ones to Rikers Island. And today I'm here to ask the board to deny this variance request from DOC to allow for additional beds and dormitories at OBCC. This is the same facility that Ramel Powell died in just last month. And instead of accepting and adapting to an increasing jail population, which may not be under your control, DOC should be using the powers it does have to reduce the jail population to the greatest extent possible. In the hearing today, DOC testified they've released 85 or 86, 83 people via the 6A program during Commissioner McGinley-Liddy's time as commissioner. And while freeing all of those people from the conditions on Rikers is a commendable act, it remains a fact or a point worth discussing that the commissioner is releasing far fewer people through this program than DOC was releasing just a few years ago. Former Commissioner Molina regularly boasted of the success of this program, how the vast majority of people released did well with the support of case managers from local nonprofits, and how very few were rearrested for any type of crime. And for all his praise of the program, he too vastly underutilized it. And I can only assume that this was due to pressure from higher-ups in the Adams administration, more concerned about New York Post headlines than about creating public safety. And I can only assume the same conditions persist. So I appreciate the board exerting pressure on DOC to use this method of decarceration that is at its disposal. There are more than 500 people serving city time on Rikers right now, and there don't have to be. We've heard from people in custody that it's not at all clear how one even applies for release through this program, that while DOC says the application is available in the law library, many people in custody have trouble accessing the application process. The board must ensure that everyone who is eligible for this program is actually able to access it, and that the process is streamlined and public and accessible to people in custody and their lawyers. And the board must ensure that the rules governing eligibility for the program are expansive and not unnecessarily restricted to a narrow subsection of the city sentence population. DOC cannot control whether or not COs upstate are on strike or how many people that the courts and the NYPD send into their custody, but they have power to significantly decrease the jail population right now that they are not using to the extent that they should. And the board should be pushing DOC to use 6A more expansively rather than granting a variance request to crowd their dormitories.
Thank you. I'd just like to remind board members that you do have hot mics, so if you're deliberating on the side, please cover your mics if you don't want it picked up. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Michael Klinger.
Good afternoon. My name is Michael Klinger. I'm a jail services attorney with Brooklyn Defender Services. Thank you for the opportunity to provide some comments today on the department's request to renew last November's variance and to ask for new variances. As an initial matter, reducing the number of people held in city jails should be the primary solution to any overcrowding concerns. And this should include a much more robust application of the Commissioner's 6A powers to release sentenced individuals. With respect to the renewed request, the department says that it has completed the increase in bed capacity to OBCC from 50 to 60 beds in the dorms, what it calls phase 1. Part of the original variance temporarily lifted the requirement to provide a minimum of 1 operable toilet and shower for every 8 people. The people we represent in the OBCC dorms confirm that even before the November variance, multiple toilets and showers in each dorm were routinely non-functioning, such that only 3 or 4 showers or toilets would be working at any given time. Maybe 3 to 5, but somewhere in that area. That meant that even without the variance, the department was generally failing to meet the minimum standards requirements for toilets and showers in those dorms. Since the board granted the November request, the competition among people in the OBCC dorms to use the toilets and showers has gotten more extreme. More people are depending on the same inadequate numbers of toilets and showers. This matters because when we force people to compete to address their most basic needs, tensions rise. We see this in so many ways related to access to commissary, telephones, visits, medical, food, and here, toilets and showers. Those tensions may lead to violence. The board has an opportunity to prevent needlessly increasing deprivation and violence in the jails, so we hope it will consider these realities in determining whether to grant an extension of this troubling variance. Additionally, in its letter to the board, the department proposes changes to West Annex dormitories at West Facility to replace small programming rooms in each dormitory to hold additional beds. In last week's testimony before the City Council, the department acknowledged that it generally fails to provide the 5 hours of daily programming already required by the city's administrative code. And the experiences of the people that we represent confirm that this is the case in every facility. In light of this, we urge the board to question how the department plans to provide programming now that it seeks to make it even more difficult to do so in West Facility. Finally, to the extent the department ties these requests to the temporarily reduced transfers to state facilities during this past month's wildcat strikes, and to the extent there are reports that officers are now returning to work at state prisons, notwithstanding the announcement today that maybe the end of March is when intake will begin happening again at the state level, the board should at a minimum hold off on granting any variances like this until it can determine whether there is a continuing need. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Klinger.
Thank you. Next speaker is Natalie Fiorenzo.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Natalie Fiorenzo, and I am a senior corrections specialist at New York County Defenders. My job is to meet with our incarcerated clients and advocate for their rights and well-being while on Rikers Island. In November, DOC first requested this variance regarding overcrowding. There was no agenda item for public comment on this variance prior to the vote, as has been practiced in the past, and we are glad to have that opportunity to comment on the renewal of this variance today. In the department's variance request, they claim that they are utilizing every tool at their disposal to address the issue of not having enough bed space. I have some suggestions for DOC as to other tools they could use to address this issue. DOC General Counsel stated today we have no control over them coming here. We have a very limited ability to release people. We want less population. DOC and COBA representatives have said on multiple occasions that decarceration will be instrumental in helping with their capacity issues, their staffing issues, and the safety in their jails. They also know that decarceration is necessary to close Rikers by 2027. I suggest that department representatives join the public defenders and many other stakeholders and advocates across the state in advocating for decarceration with the borough's district attorney offices, as well as New York City judges. The department can ask the district attorneys why their ADAs are taking so long to turn over discovery to defense counsel, which apparently is causing 70% of adjournments, further extending people's time in their custody. They can write letters in support of decarceration. They can work alongside the Littman Commission and implement the suggestions in their roadmap to reducing the jail population. Asking for this variance instead, to undoubtedly further aggravate an already disastrous situation, is bypassing the real issue. If you're running out of space, you need less people in your custody. Since DAs and judges are the ones that are putting people in your custody, working with them is the reasonable place to start. The 6A program allows for local release for those with city sentences. Today, March 10th, there are 562 people on Rikers Island that are sentenced to city time. Rearrest rates for those that are released through 6A are incredibly low. I've spoken to many clients of mine who are serving city time that have never been approached about 6A or who have been rejected but not told why. Efforts to release all those who qualify for 6A should be paramount in the department's solving of their overcrowding issue. In addition, in 2020, City Council empowered the Department of Correction to create a local conditional release commission, which, like 6A, would offer a pathway to early release for individuals serving city sentences. The commission became assembled in September 2024, but as of December had only released 24 individuals. The department should be utilizing this commission as well to its full potential, improving its efforts at advertising this program and encouraging applications among sentenced individuals. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to move to our remote commenters, and I'll ask if anybody who signed up to speak online can raise their hand so we can locate you and unmute you. So the first person is Jeff Noon Khatun. Okay. Next person is Eileen Meyer. Next person, Carolyn Mosley. Okay, neither of those three individuals are online. So again, as the chair mentioned, there will be another general public comment portion of the meeting at the end. Oh, we have an additional person who signed up, Kayla Simpson.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay, wonderful. Good afternoon, everyone. What a pleasure to see you. My name is Kayla Simpson. I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project. And thank you so much for having me. First, I just want to say that we share the board members' alarm that DOC bulldozed the variance process and added more beds in more places in violation of minimum standards. But even the variance requests as they are leave so many critical questions unanswered. With phase one, this does not sound like a temporary measure, which is the appropriate subject matter for variances. The problems that DOC is describing in these requests are not temporary problems. The department's inability to adequately staff units despite still, even at current levels, having more staff to people in custody than the national average in the jails. And I want to note, the staffing numbers DOC gave you today are not quite what they appear. Yes, at various periods in the past, the number of staff has been over 10,000. But in 2021, the monitor clarified in Nunez that for many, many years, the staffing level was actually between 7,000 and 8,000 at a much higher census of people in custody. And even then, over 1,000 were not available to work in the facilities due to sick leave or other statuses. But yes, there is a staffing problem at DOC for many reasons, and a central one is the inefficient staff deployment practices that are outside of the industry standard and well documented for years by the Nunez monitor. Today, DOC said to you, what do you want us to do? But I'm telling you, that's an answer that they have had for literally years. They are in contempt of court orders to take specific actions to fix their staff deployment problems. But the plans articulated in these variance requests, the one in November and the one this week, do not solve the staffing problems. They seem to merely add capacity that it isn't clear how the department will staff in places, West Facility and NIC, that have been the subject of great concern by this board and by the public for years. And that means that the request for renewal of the variance, premised largely on the dock strikes, is frankly pretextual. In some ways, this situation should remind us of the lessons the staffing crisis in 2021 taught us. For years, DOC was covering up underlying dysfunction in how they staffed the jails with Band-Aid measures, overtime, double and triple shifts, so that when staff started calling out sick en masse, it wasn't just a problem, it was a crisis. And the same is true here. When you turn up the stress on a dysfunctional staffing strategy, then you have to depart from minimum standards rather than creating an operational solution. We should not tolerate that. We should be using these moments to get to the root of problems. And I do want to highlight again that it's important to understand this isn't just about sinks and bathrooms and more crowded spaces, which, as Michael highlighted, are important in their own right. It's about safety and security. We heard vague assurances from DOC today about violence not increasing, which frankly are assurances I'd question. But the monitor in Nunez has documented in tremendous detail that for years, DOC staff in housing units of all kinds, including dorms, struggle to perform basic security and supervision tasks that are essential to safety. Simply put, they haven't been able to effectively supervise the censuses they've had in housing units. It wasn't safe before. It's hard to imagine how it's safe now. We are asking the board to please continue to ask more questions about this strategy and whether it addresses the root causes of the problems that underlie these variance requests. If you do grant a variance, impose conditions. Make it more limited in duration, not 4 months, 1 month. Don't give them 4 months more when they unilaterally exceeded in scope the variance you granted them last time. And hold the department accountable at your next meeting to meet the conditions you imposed and answer the questions that you have. Thank you so much. We appreciate the time to speak.
Thank you. Yes, the Executive Director, Jasmine, will summarize the variance request from the department at this time, and then we will go to motions on the variance request.
I'll summarize, and if the department has any clarifications, please feel free. So as to the initial renewal request, the department is requesting a 4-month variance renewal from BOC minimum standards sections 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 2, 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 3, and 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 5, item I, to increase bed capacity at the Otis Bantam Correctional Center dormitories from 50 to 60, and this would also reduce the amount of toilets and sinks available per person in custody. Was there anything else in addition to that?
Hi, Allie Robertson, Executive Director of Intergov. That sounds correct, just the additional piece about toilets and sink that you mentioned is covered in one of those 3 substandards that you read aloud as per the minimum standards. So that's not on top of those standards that you read, but that is included in those standards.
Okay, so that was the first request with respect to a renewal. The second request is a 4-month variance for BOC from BOC minimum standard sections 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 2, 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 3, and 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 5, item I, and that is to increase the bed capacity at the West Annex dormitories, which will result in 72 additional beds. The third request is a 4-month variance request from BOC minimum standards sections 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 2, 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 3, and 1-04, subdivision C, paragraph 5, item I, which will increase the beds at standards in EMTC to utilize the 60 beds. Is that accurate? That's accurate?
Okay, board members, we will read each variance request again so that there's full clarification and understanding of what the motion would be. So we'll start with the first variance request, and we'll read it again, and then we'll take any motions on that variance request. And that is the OBCC.
Point of procedure. I submitted 3 conditions for this variance. Shouldn't conditions be voted on before we vote on the variance?
We're going to go into the variance, and then you can make an amendment. You can offer amendments to the variance, and those conditions can be in those amendments.
Generally, we've usually developed conditions for a variance rather than a variance modification.
The variance is not on the floor as of yet. So once the variance is on the floor, you can make a motion to amend, and then we will take a vote on each individual condition or the series of conditions, and then we will vote on the variance.
So the first variance the board is considering is the renewal request, a 4-month variance renewal from the overcrowding minimum standards referenced previously with respect to the bed capacity at OBCC, increasing the beds from 50 to 60 and reducing the amount of toilets and sinks available to people in custody.
Will a board member move to vote on the variance for OBCC? I will repeat again,
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
At this point, the board members move to vote and second the motion to vote on the requested variance for OBCC. At this time, I will open the floor for debate. Dr. Cohen.
Well, I suggest that the board vote against this variance. If it approves it, it should not be for 4 months, it should just be for 2 months. And there should be, it should be amended to advise the department that they need to ask for variances before they increase population. It's not okay what they're doing, and that they should report they should report monthly by the 10th of each month all admissions and discharges from restrictive housing areas, the reasons for discharge and the discharge location, and on the sentence persons, they should let the board know what the commissioner's criteria are to identify persons for discharge, what she's using, and report on all admissions and discharges of sentenced persons. They should provide evidence of any violence that occurs in areas of where variances are approved to increase the population. I would note that in the board's report on the lack of negative complications, or that the overcrowding did not cause certain problems. It did not include departmental use of force or departmental facility lockdown. Although that information was requested by the board from the department failed to provide that information to us. And I don't think we can really make a judgment that it's safe to expand these facilities without knowing about use of force and facility lockdown data. And I think also we should get, as part of this, the number of PICs who are been in the facilities for 2 years, or 1 year, or 2 years, or 3 years, to get some sense of what the context of what the Rikers Island is. Is it a jail, or is it becoming more and more of a prison? And most importantly, that they provide to the board for our May meeting, we don't meet in April, a plan to decrease the population and update that plan monthly. And by May 1st, the department will publish a written plan to end the emergency mayoral orders, which we've been operating on for 4 years now, almost 4 years. Emergency orders, and we should discuss this at the board's May meeting.
Dr. Cohen, does that summarize the conditions and also the conditions that you presented?
Yes, it
in
does.
writing to the board members?
Yes, and I distributed this to the board members.
Okay, so I would ask if someone will move to vote on the conditions that presented by Dr. Cohen?
I support the idea that the variance should not be given more than 2 months, particularly because we know that things are shifting as we speak.
Yes, just as a point of order, though, we are voting on the conditions presented by Dr. Cohen.
So one of those
And
is that
so-
one. So I support that condition.
So I would need a motion.
Yes.
You want me to do it, to amend the? We should amend the variance request that we're voting on to be limited to 2 months rather than 4 months. Is that the procedure that you want us to do?
Well, you asked for a number of conditions.
Yes, I know. I was just doing one at a time.
And that you presented in writing to board members, and that you summarized just now. So I'm asking if any board member will move to vote on the conditions that you presented to this board for the variance.
I move to vote on these conditions.
Okay, is there a second?
Second.
Okay, thank you. If there's any debate on the proposed conditions.
Again,
Vice Chair Skip?
Yes, I would like to add, DLC spoke strenuously about their staffing situation and the lack of adequate staff. I would like to see a plan on how they propose to put additional beds into dormitories, and what is the staffing plan for that? Because I've taught a lot, and I've frequently seen dorms where only a post is occupied. So if you want to increase and actually move into a period of overcrowding, what is the staffing plan for this? How are we going to alleviate that? Definitely need that as a condition into a 2-month variance.
Okay, slightly off topic, but this question is, and I don't know if General Counsel Conroy can answer it, but is there a reason why city sentenced cannot automatically go into an ATI program? Usually if you're sentenced to city time, what you've done is not that egregious. So is there any reason, unless that has changed, so is there any reason that cannot be an automatic ATI program, the ankle monitor, et cetera, et cetera? And that would free up 500, that would eliminate 500 people.
Right, I think, as I mentioned earlier in the testimony, when we did review the city sentenced individuals who we've, considered, and every person that is city sentenced, once they get to, a certain time in, we look at, and we've expanded that, we look at their eligibility, and we have seen a significant difference in the crimes that, people are sentenced for. I mean, I saw just in the list the other day, robbery, felony burglary, CPW with a weapon, domestic violence.
Then they should get sentenced for more than city time then.
But that's not, again, out of our hands, that's in the court's hands. But I'm telling you what the charges are for people in the, in the city custody. And we could review that, we could talk about that in these circumstances, but I mean, that's really what we saw. And we're still considering in some of these circumstances, the whole look into it,
Yeah,
right?
I think the 6A program should be much broader. If the judge is going to sentence them to city time, then sentence them automatically to ATI. That's it.
Again, that's before they get to us, right,
It's
yeah.
my world.
Yeah, that's before it comes to us, right.
I want to support what Ms. Pitts is talking about, because I think the real question is, if we have a population that I know things have shifted significantly in the last 10 years, why don't build around them the kind of accountability and support that you need so they can be in the community? Particularly, you have a really top-notch programming component in Rikers. Build that to help people return safely to the community.
I mean, don't disagree, it's just that there is an overarching balance of public safety. I mean, we have that obligation to look at who the sentenced population is, what their crimes are. Again, in some of these circumstances, it's violations of orders of protection in domestic situations. I mean, we can't just allow someone to leave and then we end up with a victim of domestic violence who's now been assaulted. We look at all of these aspects, but again, it is not, I guarantee we do not have one turnstile jumper in our custody right now. It's a different population.
The judge says less than a year.
Right, but like I said, I'll reiterate that the charges are not quite as straightforward as what may appear for city sentence individuals.
One last thing. I think we should try to aggressively move forward to identify a building and remove that mental health component out of corrections. I don't know why this has to drag on for 40 years, because that's about how long it's been.
Yes, and again, not within my purview, ma'am, but,
just to
yeah,
get it out there.
yes.
Judge,
Yes, with respect to the conditions, I support the conditions 1, 2, and 3. I don't support conditions 4 and 5 at this time and would move to delete those conditions, but I would move to amend to add as a fourth condition that the monthly report to be made by the 10th of next month include not only a breakdown of the census and with respect to each of the facilities and each of the units in the facilities, but also include the staffing component, a report on the staffing component. I think that that is more germane to the variance requests. At this time, 4 and 5 are really not directly related to the variance request.
Dr. Cohen.
I accept the amendation by you.
Okay, that's fine.
You have a new set.
I'm sorry, I just want to go on record here. I want to go on record about the cavalier manner that you were talking about people in the individual crimes that they have committed, because I was one of those turnstile jumpers. And at the end of the day, people in custody are more than the crime they have committed. They are people. So if the judge sentenced them to a year, which I believe is like 8 months, and they're like a month or a half or something away from release, regardless of the crime, they should be eligible for the 6A program. You know, and I sat here and listened to this long enough. You're talking about people. You are talking about humanity, whether they are turnstile jumpers or they're axe murderers.
I don't know that I could agree with that premise as far as...
You don't have to agree. This is just
But I will
me
just say,
putting it on
we
the
do look
record.
at that, and for every person that's there, we do consider that there was a
Okay, this
victim
is
as
just
well
me putting it
in a
on the
lot of the
record.
circumstances.
Language matters, sir.
No, I
Language
understand.
matters.
Noted for the record.
Thank you.
Board Member Jude?
Yes, for the sake of transparency, the board's concern relates primarily with the department's recent moving forward without, I guess in a surreptitious manner, without informing the board and apprising us of what was happening. But the department also has a primary responsibility of adequately accommodating persons in custody. So I'm amenable to the 2-month variance with the revised conditions.
Sure, thank you. So at this point, we will take a roll call vote of each board member to state out loud if they are in favor or against or abstain. We will rephrase the 4 conditions as agreed as a friendly amendment between Judge Crozier and Dr. Cohen. So we'll read those now, and if there's any objections from the department, then understanding as to what's being presented, let us know.
I think before the board, I just want to make it clear that if you guys are going to consider the 2-month, that the day of the last day should fall on the next board meeting, which I think is May 13th. So if today's 11th, the variance, if it's a 2-month variance, should not end on the 11th because we don't come back before the board until the 13th. So I would just make that clarity.
So we can say prior to our next board meeting. 2 months, but prior to our next monthly board meeting. So whatever comes first.
What about the staffing concerns that I raised?
I'm going to read the conditions as amended on the record. The first condition is that the variance request will be for a 2-month renewal, which expires on May 12th which expires on May 13th, the date of the next board meeting. The second condition is the department must ask for a variance for all housing areas where the crowding standard or any other standard is being or is planned to be violated before action is taken and before the board considers the request. The third condition is DOC will report monthly by the 10th of next month all admissions and discharges from restrictive housing units, for example, West Facility, SMU, RESH, NIC, and the report will include the reasons for admission to restrictive housing, the reason for discharge, and the discharge housing location, including discharge home. The third condition is the department will report monthly by the 10th of each month the current criteria used by the commissioner to identify sentenced people in custody eligible for discharge, all admissions and discharges of sentenced persons, the number of sentenced persons discharged by the commissioner under authority of the 6A program and their discharge housing plan, the number of sentenced people in custody who meet the department's 6A discharge criteria but remain incarcerated. The report will also include episodes of violence, for example, fights, slashing and stabbing, assault on officer, and use of force, identifying which of these events occurred in overcrowded housing areas in OBCC, West Facility, and all other overcrowded areas housing populations higher than allowed by BOC minimum standards. The report will also include the number of people in custody in the Department of Correction who have been incarcerated for more than 1 year, 2 years, and 3 years, with their names and New York State ID number. The report will also include a breakdown of the census for each facility covered by the overcrowding variance. And the report will also include a report on the staffing of each of those facilities and the staffing plan for each of those facilities. I believe that covers all of the conditions that the board members are considering to vote on.
That is correct, and if there's no further questions, we will move to a vote. And I'll start with Vice Chair Skip.
I'm going to say yes with all the conditions met.
Judge Kosir,
Yes.
Felipe,
Yes.
Dr. Cohen,
Yes.
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Jude,
Yes.
and Board Member Sampson, yes. So
Thank you all.
at least 5 members voted in favor of the conditions for the first variance or for overcrowding by the department, and we'll announce that the conditions is approved. Now, we will move to vote on the requested variance. We voted on the conditions, now we'll vote on the variance with the conditions that have been approved. Is everyone ready to vote? Vice Chair Skip,
I vote yes with the conditions.
Judge Kosir,
Just clarification, again, we are talking only about 2 months here.
we're doing the variance with the conditions that were just approved for the variance number 1, which is the 2 months
Okay.
for the
Yes.
conditions. Felipe,
Yes.
Dr. Cohen,
No.
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Jude,
Yes.
and Chair Sampson, yes. More than 5 members have voted affirmative to move to vote the variance with the conditions, and that has now been approved. We'll now move to the second variance, and we'll read that, and we will adapt the conditions that are agreed upon. We will deal with the conditions first, and then move to the variance for a vote as well.
The second request is for a 4-month variance to suspend the board's overcrowding minimum standards with respect to additional beds in the West Facility Annex.
Is there a motion to move on the conditions set forth by Dr. Cohen in writing and at this meeting, and that was amended by Judge Corsier? Essentially the same conditions as applied to variance 1.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And by roll call vote on the conditions for variance 2, Vice Chair Skip,
Approve with the conditions.
is that a yes?
Yes, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Judge Corsier,
Yes.
Board Member Felipe,
Yes.
Dr. Cohen,
I'm voting, the vote question is voting in favor of the conditions. I vote yes.
Board Member Pitts,
Yes.
Board Member Jude,
Yes.
Chair Sampson, yes. That's a unanimous vote on the conditions for variance 2, and at least 5 members have voted in the affirmative, so the conditions for variance 2 are approved. We will now go to a vote on the variance with the approved conditions for variance 2. And it will be a roll call vote, and I'll start at the other end. Board Member Jude?
Yes.
Board Member Pitts?
Yes.
Board Member Cohen?
Abstain.
Board Member Felipe?
Yes.
Judge Corsia?
Yes.
Vice Chair Skip?
Yes.
And Chair Sampson says yes. At least 5 board members have voted affirmative for variance 2, with 1 abstention. So therefore, it passes and is approved. We will now hear from the Executive Director on variance 3, for reading for variance 3.
The third variance request is a request for a 4-month variance from the board's overcrowding minimum standards with respect to increased beds at standard in the EMTC facility.
I will take a motion for the condition as presented by Board Member Cohen and amended by Judge Corsia for variance 3 from the department regarding overcrowding. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any questions? There being no questions, we'll go to a vote on the conditions for variance 3. Vice Chair Skip?
Yes.
Judge Corsia?
Yes.
Board Member Felipe?
Yes.
Board Member Cohen?
Yes.
Board Member Pitts?
Yes.
Board Member Jude?
Yes.
And Chair Sampson, yes. We will now go to a vote. Well, I'll say that at least 5 members voted affirmative for the conditions for variance request 3 regarding overcrowding by the department, and it has been approved, and we'll now vote on the variance itself with the approved conditions. Vice Chair Skip?
Yes.
Judge Corsia?
Just for clarification, is this with respect to 4 months or 2 months?
It's the same conditions at 2 months.
Yes.
The conditions are standard
Yes.
for all 3 variances.
Okay.
Okay, yes. Board Member Felipe?
Yes.
Dr. Cohen?
No.
Board Member Pitts?
Yes.
Board Member Jude?
Yes.
Chair Sampson, yes. At least 5 board members had voted in the affirmative for variance 3, and it is therefore approved. So thank you to the department. I think that we now can go on to DOC updates. And I think that, are you going to have updates today? Okay, so, and we appreciate that because it was quite considerable in this area. But we will go on to another pressing matter, which is update on the operation of Special Management Unit.
Good afternoon. My name is Raymond Sanchez, and I am the Assistant Deputy Warden of the Custody Management Unit, Centralized Movement Unit. I would like to thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the department's operations within the Specialized Management Unit, known as SMU. As the board is aware, in February, the department held 2 important briefings with the board, one on February 9th and another on February 20th, where the group took an in-depth look and discussions at the operations of SMU. During these briefings, the SMU policy was discussed, including the criteria placement and exclusion, for placement, the hearing process, orientation procedures, and the review process. The department also highlighted the programming available to persons in custody housed in the SMU. As well as the comprehensive training provided to both uniform and non-uniform staff members. Additionally, we have thoroughly responded in writing to the board's extensive follow-up questions from February. We appreciate the board's thoughtful inquiries, and we believe our responses have addressed the areas of concern raised. Next, the department has set up a shared folder that will provide the board with access to SMU placements, forms, and hearing audio files. We understand the importance of transparency and ensuring the board has the necessary documentations for effective oversight, and we are making this a priority. At this moment, there are 8 persons in custody currently living in our SMU unit. We are continually evaluating and adjusting our operations as we work to improve on the SMU unit. We sincerely appreciate the board's thoughtful recommendations for enhancing access to services and streamlining operations in SMU. Many of these suggestions have already been considered. For example, as a result of the board's feedback, we are now ensuring that the appeal form is forwarded to the person in custody at the conclusion of their adjudication. At the conclusion of the adjudication hearing. If the determination was to continue placement in the SMU unit, this allows for immediate action on the part of the person if they wish to appeal. The board's feedback has been instrumental in helping us refine our processes, and we are committed to continuously improve to best serve the needs of both our personnel and individuals in custody in the SMU. Thank you for your time and continued collaboration, and I welcome any further questions you may have.
Any board members have questions regarding SMU update?
Yeah, I'd like to follow up and just get clarification on how the visitation has been resolved. Because we know that visitation has been a problem to the extent that the visitation for PICs in the SMU was segregated from other visitation. And so visitation was not taking place until after all of the visitation had taken place. Now, I know that in one of the written responses you indicated there is now a separate area for visitation for the SMU PICs. So can you just explain that? Is that a dedicated area? And then the question is also, what are the hours of visitation? And have those hours of visitation been, of course, communicated to both the PICs and to families as such?
So the visitation has been solved for the individuals currently in the SMU unit. It is a designated area in the main floor next to where the general population receive their visits. It is open area. Individuals are able to communicate with their loved ones on the floor, same as general population setting. The hours is the same as the general population, no difference. These individuals receive the same time frame, and in addition, the visitation schedule is also posted within the housing areas to inform the population.
Board Member Pitts?
I have a question. BOC staff have made us aware that this category of housing area is not taken to Juma services.
Hello. I will be speaking a little bit more at length about that, but I do want to identify and acknowledge that they are.
Could you please identify yourself?
Oh, yes. My name is Nell McCarty. I'm the Deputy Commissioner for the Division of Programs and Community Partnerships. So actually, as of February 28th, individuals should have been brought to the mosque for Juma services, although I know in the remark it was indicated as March 7th, which was last Friday. But individuals should be being brought to the mosque on Friday for Juma services.
Thank you.
Board Member Cohen?
Just a question to you. I thought it was previously, I have two questions. Why do you need another restrictive housing area? And the other question is, when you was described before, including Juma, the unit was not compliant with any board standards in terms of visitation, recreation, access to programming, anything. Why should we support this?
Is this a question for me?
Yes.
So the first part of the question is, why is there a second housing unit that is, has 7 hours of lockout?
I mean, I'm sorry, I think that's a two-part question, I think. So just with respect to when you weren't here at the last meeting, Dr. Cohen, we did talk about this and the need for it. You know, the Department of Correction has a duty to manage the population. We've talked about this at length here today. We talked about it at the last meeting. This type of housing management unit was designed, contemplated in a manner to give something other than where there's the full restrictive housing, and we have, you know, enhanced supervision housing, which is separate, and then we have general population. There's nothing in between. So when we've talked to our consultants, and, you know, this program was approved by the monitor, and we looked at where this intermediate kind of housing unit might exist, this is what is not uncommon and, you know, with correctional practices around the country, in that it's something in between an incident-specific enhanced supervision housing placement and what is otherwise general population. Currently, what we have in the department is nothing existing in between. People go from enhanced supervision, and then they go directly back into general population, and we see that there's some issues of recidivism or otherwise, or people that are committing acts that create a safety concern, or have a general, meet the criteria that we're talking about, that don't necessarily qualify for enhanced supervision. So that's that. And then, I'm sorry, the second part of your question?
Well, let me get back to that first.
Sure. Yeah.
The fact, lots of systems across the country are not like New York City. Some of them lock people in all day long. They do not, on principle, have the number of hours out that our systems do. And you're now suggesting, well, you created it already, right? Without our permission, a unit for people who have not had infractions that have been adjudicated. There's no they didn't do anything to get into this unit.
Well, that's not necessarily true. Part of their the placement criteria includes a previous placement in RESH, which would require an incident. It has two classification, infractions that are part of that, and then other criteria. So it's not specific. You're correct in that it is not, the immediate placement is not necessarily related to an immediate incident. It's more of a housing management designation that we're looking at across the population that meets that intermediate need to manage these
They've
individuals.
already been punished for the infraction that you used as a criteria.
In some circumstances, yes, in others, maybe not. They
Or
might
maybe
not
there
have
was-
reached that.
Maybe, in those cases, there was not an infraction.
But there could be an infraction that was not enhanced supervision housing eligible.
And these people are not, they don't deserve to be in general population. They should have their restrictions on housing, access to religious services, access to educational services, access to program services.
Well, with respect to the first part, again, that is a bifurcated question, right? So the first part is, we've identified the people that have been considered for SMU as a danger to the population, a security concern that we have. Secondary to that, the policy says that the other aspects that you're saying are restricted or impacted should not be the case. Now, what's happened already and what we're adjusting to is two different things, but the policy is clear, is that those services and religious services and visitation and everything that we've discussed, roll out, as we talked about the last time aside, that should not be impacted. What the only restriction here is the time out of cell.
And is there is there a process by which people are given a chance to question their placement?
Due process is part of the policy. Yes, we talk about it. Due process that's similar with any restrictive housing. The due process aspect is the same. So they have the ability to, have a hearing, to present evidence, to appeal it, and then there's a review, and then
Is
there's an
there a
appeal.
hearing before they get assigned?
No, they can be placed there assigned, but it's has to be within minimum 7 days, but I think we're getting them within 3 to 5.
We're going to move on.
That's fine, I just wanted
Dr.
to clarify
Cohen,
that. Thank you.
I think there is going to be a classification presentation as well that should
I'm sorry.
more
Okay.
light to the department's position.
Just on that point, there's not a presentation regarding classification. I actually had a conversation earlier today. I think we could maybe put this on, it's not on the agenda now, but the classification piece, I'm having a conversation with the council separately about that, your council, regarding what was sent in the letter to us about a violation of minimum standard. I don't think it's actually legally reflected appropriately, so we could follow that up, but we don't have a presentation on classification right now for this
Okay,
meeting.
yeah, well, it is this chair's understanding that there was supposed to be a classification briefing, and that the staff would be here from the department. I know at the last board meeting, I had some real questions regarding classification for the SMU unit, and just based on my initial interviewing of those individuals in the unit, placed in the unit. And so you're telling me that there is no presentation?
Hi, Chair. We're happy to schedule a presentation specifically on classification because that is not just relevant to SMU. As you know, it's department-wide. Classification touches everything. We're prepared to speak on SMU today, but we are more than happy to have a briefing with you and any other members that are interested on classification and how it works throughout the department and as it relates to SMU.
Okay, I look forward to those scheduled
Thank you.
briefings. Thank you. I think that there was also discussion on the plans for accommodating the holy month of Ramadan. Yes.
All right. So I will jump into that agenda item on religious services and cover both access to Juma, but also Ramadan as well. So good afternoon. My name is Nell McCarty, the Deputy Commissioner of the Division of Programs and Community Partnerships. I do appreciate the opportunity to speak to you today regarding access to religious services, specifically Juma, services for people in custody housed in the Special Management Unit, and the department's work to facilitate the observance of Ramadan. Guided by our directive 3261, the department provides all people in custody with the opportunity to exercise their religious belief of any religion they choose. The department employs chaplains of Muslim, Catholic, Protestant, and Jewish faiths who provide religious services, study groups, and classes aligned with their specific religious affiliations for persons in custody who wish to practice and engage in that religion. The department and the chaplaincy team facilitate access to religious holy day observances for persons in custody where volunteers, staff, and persons in custody gather to observe and celebrate. Additionally, our chaplains offer spiritual counseling and guidance to the population separate from religious practice. In addition to leading congregate prayer, one-on-one prayer, and spiritual counseling, our small but mighty chaplaincy team does the incredibly important work of scheduling and supervising our religious volunteer groups, supporting people in custody and staff after allegations of sexual assault or self-injury, notifying the next of kin of serious injury or death, and providing ongoing religious support to those in need across the department. To uphold the right of persons in custody to exercise their religious belief, all persons in custody across the island have access to congregate religious services aligned with their religious affiliations. Juma services specifically take place between 12 noon and 2 p.m. every Friday, and there's a significant interest from the population to attend congregate Juma services. Those persons interested in attending are escorted to the mosque or chapel, space permitting, and the department must also ensure that persons in custody gathering in a communal space are congregated safely. That said, any person housed in the special management unit interested in participating in Juma services are being escorted at this time to OBCC or to the OBCC mosque to participate. The department recognizes the importance of congregate prayer, and our chaplaincy team works diligently to ensure as many people as possible are able to engage. The department is excited to welcome the holy month of Ramadan and celebrations across the facilities. This offers a meaningful opportunity for us to support and celebrate all persons in custody and staff who identify as Muslim. Ramadan observances began on Saturday, March 1st, and is scheduled to end on Sunday, March 30th of 2025. To ensure the smooth operations, a teletype was distributed to all commands and relevant stakeholders, providing guidance on meal service arrangements, daily congregate services, and the chaplaincy team, including the imams, have all worked closely with internal stakeholders to ensure the success of Ramadan observance is occurring across all of our facilities. Throughout the month, Muslims in custody will receive packaged breakfast meals in the evening packaged breakfast meals in the evening to allow them to eat before dawn. These meals will consist of cereals, milk, fruit, and dates. We have coordinated with the production kitchens to ensure the timely delivery of these meals. Participating persons in custody are escorted to the designated area for the evening congregate prayer and meal at 1600 hours. A daily list is maintained to track those who wish to attend Ramadan services. During Ramadan, imams provide the mandated Juma services on Friday, while also leading daily Ramadan services within their commands. Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I'm happy to answer any questions that you have regarding the department's efforts to ensure the provision of religious services.
Vice Chair Skip, then Dr. Khan.
Yes, I might have missed this, but are the people in custody who are in the restricted housing areas of the SMU, RESH, EHS, or whatever, are they allowed to participate in the Ramadan specific activities? Are they participating every day? Are they receiving their allotment of meals? Are they allowed to congregate?
I can absolutely confirm that they are receiving their allotment of meals. As for their daily participation in congregate services, I would have to get back to you on the exact numbers of how many people are going to the congregate service every single day. But what I can confirm specific to the special management unit is that they should be brought down for their congregate services to the mosque.
Please get back to me before Ramadan is over. Thanks.
Yes.
I just want to, is that okay?
Go ahead, Dr.
Just to comment, I was part of a discussion with the department about access to Juma services. And the department, for a long time during that discussion, said it'll be on Wednesday, it will be on Wednesday, it will be on Wednesday. Finally, you agreed to bring it to Friday. I'm concerned generally that that's what happens in special management units. People have problems with you have problems with your ability to do what you perhaps want to do because of the special management unit. Are you available to answer other questions about the SMU?
To the extent that I can answer, I absolutely will, but I will just identify when we did and had spoken, it wasn't that it was Juma was happening on Wednesday, because Juma is on Fridays between 12 and 2, but there was a Muslim imam visiting the area to provide spiritual support and guidance and service to the people who were on the SMU. That being said, I'm happy to try to answer as many questions as possible.
When our staff visited, they found some issues. In terms of lock-in, there were less hours out than scheduled. There are dates of, I'm sure we can give you access to when these things were done. Recreation was not provided from Thursday, February 6th to February 10th. The library was not afforded via request slips and not in person. There was documentation for the service provided on the 7th and 8th. Protestant services Muslim services were not afforded. Catholic services were not afforded. There were no distinct logbooks on programming or lock-in and log-out time. So program and document. It's difficult for us to monitor whether that is happening. And PICs felt that they were having problems with, their families were having problems with access to visiting because you have scheduled visiting for SMU after everybody else visits. So people come not knowing that, and they can wait for hours. Families can come and wait for hours before they get a chance to visit with their loved ones, and that there was problems with distribution of razors.
Dr. Cohen,
Yes, okay.
in the urgent,
okay.
personal request, for me, it's 10 o'clock. I just came from a place that's 7 hours different, so it's 10 p.m. right now for me. So just to move forward, we have covered a lot of this at our last board meeting, and we've covered these at 2 subsequent meetings with the board member and DOC staff. Most of the questions have been answered. It might be 1 or 2 outstanding on the SMU matter, but I would like to move forward, though, at this time, if it's okay with board members, unless there's, go ahead.
Yeah. Building on the question from Dr. Cohen, but mental health. I mean, it sounds like there was some planning to open SMU. There was definitely a lot of planning with ACOC. Were you involved in thinking about what kind of programming needed to be available, particularly because we are hearing that mental health is not available?
Well, just to clarify, mental health services, so clinical treatment is afforded by correctional health services and is available to all individuals who would qualify and need mental health services. But when it comes to, let's say, supplemental programming that may address things like cognitive behavioral therapy, skill building, that was taken into account of what type of programming we would be placing into this housing unit, and in fact, trying to bring in curricula that is engaging in a group dynamic, because we do have the opportunity to group with individuals very clearly in the SMU, and so being really mindful of how do we engage people, whether that's through role playing or what type of activities, that it's not something that is just written or interactive journaling, but that it's a little bit more engaging.
So if because you look at the history of the individual to make a determination to move to SMU, you do have a lot of information about what they did before. Like if they were in some of your programs, you will even have their individualized treatment plans. Are those things that are taken into consideration when making a decision for SMU? I heard from him a lot of look at crime, a lot of look at previous behavior? Is there a look at, I don't know, growth or improvement? I mean, someone could have been in one of your units and actually done really well. I'm trying to figure out how is it that you determine who goes there?
That's a question.
Yeah, well, I know full determination, I may pass it over, but I do just want to speak a little bit to the programming part. The department is making strides to ensure that there's transparency across the different groups, or divisions rather, that's a better term I should use, divisions within the department, to ensure that we are sharing that programming information and that it is available. For example, Assistant Deputy Warden Sanchez does have access to be able to pull programming reports if relevant and needed on any individual in custody. So that is available to us, and we've also integrated it into, unrelated to the Special Management Unit, our classification system, so that we are able to have that information populate so people are aware when people are programming and if they've kind of met and identified or indicated programmatic threshold each month that would deem them as, you know, or openly programming and having that demonstrate change.
Okay, thank you. Whenever you get a chance, if you can send us the programs that you're using. You mentioned
Absolutely.
That would be shared with everyone. Thank you.
Yes, go ahead, Board Member Pitts.
Okay, this is for the debt.
Yes.
The PICs that are in SMU, are they considered the most dangerous out of the population? Also, it looks like 2 criteria gets them there. An infraction or their classification or both. And if it's classification, what's the number?
So individuals that are currently placed in our SMU, it's not solely on classification score. It is more than 2 criteria that fits placement. One of our criteria can be an individual that's being discharged from our ESH unit. Another criteria can be an individual engages in repeated acts, you know, multiple infractions. He may be identified as a leader of his current SRG group. There's different criteria that makes an individual qualify for the SMU. It's not specifically on classification.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Board Member Pitts. And I have one question, if I may. Is there a dedicated security team for the SMU?
At this time, the facility's main security are the ones that are assigned to this SMU.
Okay, so that's no.
Again, it's the security for the entire facility.
Okay. And how about a unit manager?
A unit manager, there's no specific UM assigned to SMU at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much. If there's no other questions, we can move on to the status of sick call dashboard. Thank you, Deputy Warden.
Thank you. Thank you.
Deputy Commissioner.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is James Saunders, and I'm the Deputy Commissioner of Health Affairs, Compliance, and Quality Division. Thank you for the opportunity to provide a status update on the department's plans for the development of the shared scheduling and sick call tracking dashboard with our colleagues from CHS. So, just to quickly give you the update, after the call between DOCs and CHS's IT teams on January 30th, CHS provided DOC with a sample file containing data elements that could be electronically transmitted to DOC and included in the scheduling dashboard. So DOC reviewed these data elements and provided CHS with additional fields that would be helpful in building an all-inclusive dashboard encompassing all types of clinic production. The DOC and CHS IT teams then met again to discuss the next steps. That meeting between IT teams produced significant results. So we're now in tentative agreement with the data elements to be captured within this scheduling system, and we've estimated the time for completion to be by the end of this calendar year. So now that we have finalized what will be shared, the teams are now addressing how to share it. So the DOC IT team has already begun the initial steps to build this application, even while conversations with CHS IT are ongoing. So I'd like to emphasize that the goal is to ensure that all types of scheduled clinic appointments, including but not limited to sick call, will be tracked in this shared system. The idea being that this scheduling system could reconcile if a person in custody is on multiple call-down lists on the same tour, significantly streamlining operations for both agencies. So we look forward to implementing the shared scheduling dashboard, which will give the department the ability to better track and record requests for sick call, instances of successful production and non-production, and the reasons why. So this is only achievable with the help of our partners at CHS, and we're grateful for their assistance and for the board's support as we continue the work to build this system. Thank you, and I welcome any questions.
Thank you, Deputy Commissioner Saunders. Any questions at this time for the Deputy Commissioner?
Can the staff have reviewed sick call recently in depth? Can they present their comments?
I don't think that staff member is present now. She's not at this meeting.
Okay, well, I spoke with her yesterday, and she expressed, based upon her monitoring, this is a difficult process, sick call. It's very important, but it's not easy to do. It removes people from their housing areas, which is always a problem. And therefore, your job is to try to create a situation where that can happen reliably and repeatedly. Apparently it's not happening right now. You're devising this dashboard to see what's going on, essentially, to be able to document what's happening. I mean, our staff interviewed many people in the facilities and found that they were very confused about what sick call was, how to get there, and I hope that that can happen. I was wondering if, just a suggestion that to move forward with this project, that the board and CHS and the department work together to establish a committee to review what needs to happen to improve access to sick call. I'd like to make a motion that the board endorse that and that the chair establishes such a committee.
Your motion can be entertained after the presentation and questions. That's for certain. Okay?
Okay.
Are there any other questions?
Any other questions to Deputy Commissioner Saunders? Board Member Jude?
Thank you. I think it's really important and it's positive that you've moved forward to having in detail what's going to be shared. I would just ask that while it's being implemented, that there be multiple pathways for PICs to request sick call.
Understood. So there are multiple pathways. There are house phones. There's at least 4 house phones in every housing unit that persons in custody can avail themselves of. We recognize that everybody doesn't have a tablet. That's why the ability to call 614-pound is there. The other pathway is to speak directly with the housing area officer and request to be taken. And I will also share the fact that we are, as an institution, implementing executive level rounds, and we're getting a lot of feedback from the executives who are conducting rounds. They are encountering folks who have questions. A lot of those questions are actually being resolved. And I can tell you that personally, when I do my rounds and I speak to persons in custody and they request to be taken to sick call, we avail them of that opportunity immediately.
Thank you.
Individually, when you hear, that's not a system.
Well, it's supporting a system that It's part and parcel of that system.
Hold on, Board Member Cohen. Let's just stay in order here. I'd like to, if you don't mind, I believe in concurrence, and so I didn't see CHS presentation or discussion, but I'd like to see what the concurrence on your dashboard, and I know you talk end of calendar year, the intermediary steps to ensure compliance with minimum standards prior to end of year implementation. I'd like you to talk to that a little bit and where we are.
So the department makes its best efforts to ensure that people have access to medical care. And so, we receive on a daily basis from our colleagues at CHS a daily call down list. And we make our best efforts to produce individuals to their scheduled clinic appointments. Oftentimes, and I would tell you that most of the non-production is related to refusals. You have people who, people in custody have agencies, so they would rather go to programming, or perhaps they would rather go to law library, or perhaps they'd rather go to recreation. And so it's their choice. We are not going to use force to bring people to their medical appointment. So we do make every effort to ensure that they have access to care.
Thank you. CHS, are you going to lend something? Because I know it's a collaboration, and so I would like to hear from you.
Hi, Patsy Yang, Senior Vice President, Health and Hospitals. Your question about, I can talk a little bit about what Deputy Commissioner Saunders just said. My team has been working with him. Again, we CHS schedule appointments. I think Dr. Cohen knows this well. We've been talking about this for years. CHS schedules appointments for patients whom we know we want to see, and those are in lists that were called call down lists. We provide that electronically. The department has asked to create a dashboard that would be more useful to them for tracking and monitoring and escorting patients whom we have already asked to see. That is distinct from, as I understand it, the DOC sick call process, which is, as Dr. Cohen knows well, is not visible to us. That is where patients whom we do not know that we want to see have an issue on their own and wish to come to see us and talk to us, separate from scheduled appointments, which is what we are currently working on with DOC. Those elements, I think I'm not the right person, I'm not close enough to say which elements have been determined, but I would assume it's the first name, last name, book and case, and where we're asking DOC to bring the patient. I'm assuming it's at least that.
Dr. Cohen, and then I'd like to follow up with a question.
The Board of Correction Standards on Healthcare, as you know, specifically mandate a policy of review and of healthcare to assure its quality, and that group should be composed of the Board of Correction, the Department of Correction, and CHS. I would propose that process needs to be firmed up. Certainly, before you develop your dashboard, there are elements that could come out of that kind of committee discussion that are absolutely critical. And I think that, as Patsy described it, CHS really doesn't have a contact with the patients until they get there. They only see patients that they schedule. They're not involved in the process of figuring out who gets to them. And they, as the clinical provider, they have a significant part of the responsibility to make sure that people who want to be seen are seen. And at the current time, they are not involved in that process at all. So I think an effort based upon the board standards that BOC and DOC and CHS should together assure quality, that a committee be established to carry that process out before the department creates its own software. Really, this software has to reflect a clinical component as well. It's not just operational.
Dr. Cohen, if you can take a couple of minutes, because I said we will entertain a motion on your part. If you can draft something that.
I finished what I had to say.
I just, if I may, I just want to clarify something. CHS before COVID, which is now 5 years ago, created on its own a health triage line, which offered another way, a way different from DOC sick call, which is where a patient goes up to an officer in a housing area where we are not all the time, can pick up the phone and call us and talk to a nurse, and we can do some triage there. That may or may not result in our then asking that DOC bring that patient down. That becomes a scheduled appointment that we have asked. CHS has initiated the request for the patient to come to see us. So patients do have a way to contact us. We created that. That is not the same. We are happy to work with DOC to create this dashboard that will help them better manage those requests of scheduled appointments where, again, we have asked for a patient to come to us. Whatever will help with that production, we're game for. This is different. This is access in my vocabulary. That's access, not quality of clinical care. A very different issue.
I believe it's access, but without access, there's no quality.
Yeah, my last question to you, Doctor, is staffing for those PICs that are seeking medical care. Is it adequate staffing on your side to handle visits?
Yes, thank you for asking that. We have managed so far. We have staffing, we have overtime, we have temporary staff to cover that. We are concerned, as you have heard from the department, in terms of their ability to have enough staff to connect our patients with us. That impacts terribly, deeply. So we CHS are okay for now, but the increased census is a concern, I think, for everybody.
Okay, thank you. If there's no other questions, Dr. Cohen wanted to introduce a motion.
Yeah, I would introduce a motion to establish a committee of the board, the Department of Correction, and Correctional Health Services to review review the sick call process, both its operational and clinical effectiveness. I move that.
Okay, so Dr. Cohen has a motion on the floor to establish a committee of the BOC, DOC, and CHS to review sick call processes and its effectiveness. And is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? The motion is approved. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
We, at public comment section, we will now hear comments from the public. Jasmine's not here right now. She had to step out. So General Counsel will call the names of those signed up to speak.
Thank you. The first is Shilpa Rao.
Good afternoon, members of the board. My name is Shilpa Rao, and I'm a law student interning at the Urban Justice Center. I'm presenting testimony on behalf of an Urban Justice Center client who's currently incarcerated at Rikers. This is the first part in a 4-part testimony. This is my testimony about Rikers. See, Rikers was the best thing that could have happened to me. Rikers made me appreciate life and never take anything for granted. My experience, good or bad, taught me how to have self-control and channel my energy. Thank you, Rikers, for everything you taught me. You definitely have made me a better person, but it's time for me to get out. I am 23 years old and grew up in Brooklyn. I was arrested in December of 2019 and have been incarcerated since then. I've been housed at Horizon, RNDC, RESH, and GRVC. I have been in restricted housing 5 to 7 times, each for 60 to 90 days. Restricted housing used to be called True, then Second Chances, then Secure, and now it's called RESH, but it's all the same. Since 2019, the only thing that has changed in solitary is the number of hours outside your cell. When I was first in restrictive housing, we only got 1 hour of outside cell time, and now we get 4 hours. They also haven't changed how long it takes to go from level 1 to level 2 once you're in RESH. The minimum is 30 days in level 1, and you have to be on your best behavior to go to level 2. The officers will extend your time in RESH for small things, and any infraction an officer writes automatically gets you 7 extra days in RESH or will get you sent back to level 1. There is no transition after RESH. You go from level 1 to level 2, and after that you're sent back to general population. The cells are the same in general population and restricted housing. The main differences between general population and restricted housing are you have to be strip searched in front of a camera every time you come out of your cell, and they limit your social out-of-cell time. For the strip search, you are taken to a room called a 3-point, and they cuff you. You are strip searched in front of the officers. The officer desk is right there, so there are multiple officers walking by. There are rules that a person isn't supposed to get strip searched if there is a body scanner, but the officers don't follow this rule because a lot of them don't know about it. The officers shouldn't be strip searching people every day. No one wants to be strip searched and chained to a chair early in the morning. I understand you have a job to do, but we shouldn't be strip searched every single day. People aren't animals. After getting searched, the officers put a cuff on your arm and your legs and chain your foot to a chair. The only time you get to socialize is when you are in the chair for 4 hours. People used to stab each other, so they put up little barricades. It's like a gate. You can see through it, it's seat level high, and you can't get over it because you are cuffed. You can't stand up straight because you are cuffed. The testimony will continue with subsequent comments from the general public. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jen Hio.
Good afternoon. My name is Jin Ha. I'm also a law student and an intern with the Urban Justice Center here to continue the testimony. There's no programming in RESH. During the 4-hour out of cell time, you're with program facilitators, but they don't actually do any programming. You're free to just talk, and there's nothing that helps you learn from the stuff you did. There's never any structure. There's only one counselor who was helpful in tutoring me for the GED, but other than that, the facilitators aren't doing anything. There's just unstructured talking with other people. We never got any kind of behavioral or therapeutic programming. There are also huge problems with the schedule for lockout hours in RESH. The officers make you wake up at 5 a.m. for out of cell time just to go back into your cell at 10 a.m. Not a lot of people are morning people. If you say at 5 a.m. that you don't want to come out, then you won't come out all day. Changing the schedule would improve things a lot, maybe changing it to 8 a.m. to 12 p.m. or 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I've had a disciplinary hearing each time I've been in restrictive housing. A couple of times I was found guilty without any hearing. If you try to ask for a hearing when they're not giving you one, they think you're riling them up and will punish you by not giving you a hearing. I've never had representation, and I've never even had a chance to represent myself. Hearings are biased. Once you go, you are automatically guilty. You don't have any second chances, and they never hear your side of the story. For example, during one hearing, they only showed the part where I was being aggressive, not the part where the officer had instigated the altercation. Hearings are just people telling you what you did. Hearings should be like a debate. Everyone should be able to share their side of the story. Men and women lie, but cameras don't. Match the testimony to what the cameras are showing to see if people are lying. Give me an opportunity to fight for my rights. They don't give you chances to fight for what you believe in. During your orientation in restrictive housing, you are taken to the clinic and asked if you want to talk about mental health. If you say no, they won't ask anymore. Every morning at 6 to 7, the doctor asks if you want to go for a sick call, and if you want someone to talk to. If they asked you one time, they won't give you another chance to change your mind. Your first week there, they ask, but after that, you don't see anybody. I didn't take them up on mental health because I'm already in the system. Sometimes, if I go to mental health, I just want to take a walk. It's up to them if they want to call for you. If they don't want to, they won't do that. Mental health treatment should be available 24/7 whenever a person requires. Even the lowest request should be taken seriously because you don't know what that person is feeling. When a person is asking to speak to someone, don't just brush it off. Make sure they get the care they need. Thank you. This testimony will continue in another 2 parts.
Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Jennifer Parrish.
And this is one PIC's testimony in a 4-part series, am I correct?
You're correct. Before I begin, I just want to say, I think it's good that we're having this testimony today because he's telling you about the programs that already, or the restrictive housing that already exist, and it's no different from SMU. SMU is certainly not an improvement on that, and the DOC should be implementing Local Law 42 in the board's rules to make a real change on that. So I'll continue with his statement now. Understaffing is a huge issue at Rikers. Sometimes there are no officers on the floors. Imagine 50 people in a house and no officers. Anything could happen. You could get cut, stabbed, and no one is there to help. Every building at Rikers operates differently. Some buildings have more officers than others. GRBC is barely staffed right now. RNDC, good staff, and OBC, good staff. RESH has no staff on the weekends at all, so you can just stay in your cell all day. Even if there is staff, it's all up to them if they want to work. Officers can just stay in their bubble, and then you stay in your cell. It's all up to how the officers feel. Officers are also antagonizing a lot of situations. Officers know who you have conflicts with and send them to hurt you. The officers need to stop putting people in danger by forcing people to go to places they don't feel safe. At the end of the day, they will get hurt. I've experienced this every time. That's why I'm always in trouble, because they put me in with people who cause trouble. You have PTSD and paranoia on Rikers, so the issue is that people are trying to protect themselves by hurting other people before they get hurt. The thing that messes you up in most restrictive housing is the officers. They play mind games that make you go crazy. The officers make people suffer based on their own personal preferences. There could be multiple people in RESH stressing, and an officer can say, I like the person in 10 cells, so I'll give them food, but I don't like the person in 13 cells, so I'm going to leave them hungry. On top of that, there's no one to complain to when you're mistreated, unlike in general population. There's no way to hold officers accountable. For example, if you need water, you have to ask the officers, and sometimes they don't give it to you. If you aren't polite, they starve you, and they don't give you food. You have to be strong-minded because the officers will play mind games. Everything you need is through them. They can go in your cell and do all types of stuff with you, and you can't do anything about it. I've been way more than mistreated by officers in Rikers. I've been beaten, concussed, and I have nerve damage in my right hand because of these people. I went to the clinic on Rikers, and I'm supposed to go to Bellevue to see a specialist. To this day, I haven't been to a specialist, and I can't feel anything in my right hand.
Thank you. The next speaker is Garrett Salzman.
Good afternoon. My name is Garrett Salzman. I'm also a law student and intern with the Urban Justice Center, and this is the final portion of the testimony on behalf of the client. Another big problem is the officers will take personal items from people. This has happened to me multiple times. The officers have taken my personal photos of family and friends and ripped them up in front of me. They have ripped up the discovery I have for my case, and they have thrown lotion on my clothes. I've learned my lesson and never got mail again because they are going to destroy it. The officers have also taken my commissary and given it to other people. These things have happened the entire time I've been at Rikers. Another thing that happens is Rikers Island's famous world tour, where inmates go to multiple houses in less than 24 hours. Whenever you get too comfortable, the officers do this to you. They bring you to rival houses you have issues with and pay people in the rival house to cut you. The officers watch through the cameras to see how long it takes for you to get cut in the rival house and make bets on this. Welcome to gladiator school. The officers need to get better training on how to deal with people in jail. They see us only as delinquents and not as human beings. They get to go home and be with their families every day, but the majority of us are miserable since we haven't seen our family in years. Officers are trying to be equal and relate to me, but they can't relate to me. They have better opportunities, and they are meant to inspire me to do better so I can come home. But instead, officers get mad because you don't say good morning or other petty stuff like that. If the officers learned how to improve their communication skills and not get involved in petty disputes, things will be much better. Rikers is changing, sometimes for good and sometimes for bad. You are not supposed to be comfortable in jail, but different buildings could copy the 4-building RNDC model. RNDC gives you the opportunity to improve as a person. They offer you school programs that could benefit you. Other jails don't have nothing, so all people do is talk all day. Talking leads to arguments, and arguments leads to slashing and fights. The only thing Rikers can never fix is how they treat inmates. Us inmates' enemies are the officers. The officers are corrupted, like seriously corrupted. They talk to you crazy, they put bounties on your head, they take your stuff. See, most violence in Rikers is done out of fear. People don't want to get hurt, so they strike first, especially when you have officers betting on the outcome of fights. Don't get me wrong, Rikers has definitely gotten better, but corruption still goes on. It needs to stop because people are tired of the violence. We just want to go home. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Michael Klinger.
Good afternoon again. My name is Michael Klinger. I'm a jail services attorney with Brooklyn Defender Services. Thank you for the opportunity to provide general public comment today. We wish to bring the board's attention to a recent change in the living conditions at RESH, particularly at level 1 in RESH. We're aware of a new limitation apparently instituted in early or mid-February, whereby people in level 1 who do not have their own tablet are limited to using the wall phones for only one call each day for a maximum of 6 minutes. Can't exceed 6 minutes, but you also can't use that 6 minutes for multiple calls. We've heard varying details. It's not clear to us whether that limit includes legal calls. Some people we represent say that it does, but some department staff have told us that it does not. So maybe there's a gap between policy and practice that the board can investigate. But even if the limit doesn't include legal calls, it still forces people to choose between calling their families or the health triage line, between calling 311 or commissary, between calling their parent or their child. And it appears that this limit, arbitrarily limiting people to no more than 6 minutes a day on wall phones that are already a contested resource, does not apply to those people lucky enough to have tablets. The failure to provide working tablets to everyone in custody is already a problem, but the inequity of that failure is made more extreme by this limit, where people with tablets are apparently able to make 21 minutes of calls every 3 hours as provided for in the handbook. We ask the board to clarify the department's policy with respect to phone access and the department to do more to ensure that people in its custody do have access to tablets. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Natalie Fiorenzo.
Hi, good afternoon again. My name is Natalie Fiorenzo, and I am a senior corrections specialist at New York County Defenders. Before I get started with what I prepared for today, I just really want to say I'm really sick of hearing about the problem children at Rikers, that they need this
whole new unit for? What about the problem COs all across the island that I never hear of having a leave of absence, being fired, or even being removed from a housing area where they have sexually harassed someone or stolen their property or ripped up their children's photos in front of them? I think that needs to be addressed as well. Moving on. We have heard from our clients, like Mr. Klinger said, that in the beginning of February, a policy change was made in ESH Level 1, reducing phone calls from 21 minutes every 3 or 4 hours to 1 6-minute call per day. This was incredibly shocking both to us and to our clients, who rely on their phone calls to call their attorneys and social workers, speak to their family to help them stay grounded and supported, or call for sick call if they need medical attention. I reached out to the department's legal division to ask about this new policy, why it came about, what its parameters were, et cetera, and I was eventually told after many days that attorney phone calls are not included as a part of the 6-minute limit, specifically those that are on the do not record list. There are multiple people involved in someone's legal case, however, and it is not realistic to think that every single phone number of a legal representative would be on the do not record list. This is one of many issues with this time limit. Overall, contact with the outside world is instrumental to a person in custody in trying to maintain their mental health in such horrible conditions. Could the board please find out more about this time limit and do what you can to have it reverse back to the original 21 minutes per 3 or 4 hours? Lastly, access to religious services is on the agenda today. This has actually been a huge issue across the island in the past 6 months or so, specifically with Juma services. The corrections specialist team has encountered multiple scenarios where DOC has denied access to religious services for entire housing areas at will, seemingly. The department's own Access to Religious Programs and Practices Directive 3261 that was referenced earlier today states that anyone denied religious services are to be given a written notice and a hearing. For our clients and others in their housing area, this has not been the case. We were also prevented from mailing Bibles to our clients earlier this year, and we were told there was an island-wide ban on Bibles. This was in like December and January. Although depending on which facility our clients were in, some got them and some didn't. Like anything else on Rikers Island, the implementation of department policies are random, varied, and seemingly based on the officer's discretion rather than actual directives. This results in our clients suffering lack of religious services, other basic services, and rudimentary human rights. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Chaplain Dr. Victoria A. Phillips. Dr. V.
Peace and blessings, everyone. I have a few things I want to go over. I'm Chaplain Dr. Victoria Phillips, and I'm representing Visionary V Ministries and Jails Action Coalition. First, I'm actually recovering from a surgery, so I think it's disgusting that any board member will actually rush another board member while questioning DOC and or make reference to it's 10 o'clock in my time because of my calendar. Like, enough is enough. Lives are on the line. Also, DOC never answered board member skip questions before board member Pitts stated her thoughts on 6A, basically reminding DOC that they are not judged nor jury, but they do have access to 6A and their authority. Also, speaking of 6A, Charisma Jones would still actually be alive if she wasn't murdered less than 60 days before her release date. Another thing I want to bring up is religion and spirituality is not up for discussion on domestic soil. You know, as a chaplain, as a mental health professional, as someone who's worked in nursing all behind correctional walls, I know for a fact that many times that is the one thing that people have to deal on, to continue moving forward on. And actually, the Prophet Muhammad, peace and blessings be upon him, said the difference between a believer and a non-believer is their salah. And with Islam comes 5 pillars, and fasting is a must. And I say that because when DOC responded today, they said they should have been at least brought by March 7. Should is not good enough. Should does not say that they were. And BOC did not even push back on that should when it was stated to you all. You know, there are other things rather. She even mentioned food being brought the night before for Zahor, for breakfast. But she mentioned cereal and milk. Milk sat out all night, make it make sense. What are they properly being given as detainees? And when we say break and fast iftar at 1600 military time, that's 4 p.m. Today's sunset will not occur until 6:58 p.m. Make it make sense. You having them break fast before the time. unacceptable. Classification should also be a public report back. I actually used to have to call out Tim when he ran that department because of things I know that go on behind the walls that the public is not privy to. So it should be a public contact. When we speak of sick call, 4 commissioners have went by since 2019, and we've continued this rabbit hole, this unacceptable response from the department. And I'm going to even throw CHS in when it comes to how we deal with sick people. Again, Charisma Jones, based on your reports, would still be alive if she had access to medical. When DOC responded today, they said that detainees have house phones, so everyone has to hear the HIPAA information. They said that they have tablets, so the tablets we know collects data. Again, not privy to DOC. They said that they could tell an officer in a unit, but many officers only have an A officer. So who are they telling that's going to actually be accountable to make sure that they see medical staff? And then they said the daily list, and I'll report back 2019, the Vice Chair, Stanley Riches, questioned DOC and their doctor on sick call and their response. And there was no appropriate rollover. And in 2025, they are still falling short. How many people died between last meeting and this one? Peace and blessings. Do your job.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Fran Gatellis.
Hi. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dr. Frances Gatellis. I'm a clinical psychologist, and I'm also a member of the Halt Solitary Campaign and the Jails Action Coalition. Unfortunately, I'm sorry that I missed your discussion before about the new solitary unit that's been established. I went out a moment for a cup of coffee and missed the whole discussion. But I do want to remind you that solitary confinement has been declared a form of torture, and that no matter what, we know that what it does to people, having no legitimate social interactions with other people, is it creates more anger, it creates depression, it creates anxiety. It can even worsen people's psychological problems. And you have a number, the last statistic that I heard about the number of people in custody here who have serious psychological problems was 55%. So given that, you have to give serious consideration to how you're going to treat people who have psychological problems, although you have to, solitary confinement can even create psychological problems for someone who didn't have them before. We keep hearing that the staff or the correctional personnel are fearful of the danger that they experience, and yet if you use solitary confinement and worsen people's psychological condition, you're making it more likely than that they're going to face danger. They're not going to be safe. So what you need to do is find a way to make sure that the staff is taught how to work with people in a way that does not create psychological problems, in a way that does not torture people. They have to learn how to talk to people, how to interact with them in meaningful ways. And I'm not sure how, right now, we know that the mayor is stopping implementation of the bill we recently passed to end the use of solitary confinement. I don't know how much power you have to stop the mayor from doing that, but I think that that is something you should try to do. He should not be torturing people. We should not be torturing people. And we can't let this go on. So I know you were upset when you learned about the new unit and you wanted more information about it because you were not informed, but it's not enough to just get information. What you need is to take action and find a way to stop it. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to our remote speakers. The first speaker is Kayla Simpson.
Hello again, can you hear me? Sorry, yes? Okay, I see your thumbs up. Thank you, Dr. Cohen. Hello again. Thank you again for having me. Kayla Simpson, I'm a staff attorney at the Legal Aid Society's Prisoners' Rights Project. I just want to say a few quick words about the Special Management Unit. First, I just want to sincerely thank board staff for your follow-up, your visits, your oversight work. Your presence in that unit and your reports today are essential, they're valuable, and we appreciate you. 2 comments. First, the reports about what's happening there are unacceptable. The list of issues that the executive director reported today reads like the entire list of headings for the minimum standards. If that's the way the unit is operating, it should be closed. It's been well over a month. That is not functional. It's not right to have people there. But second, I want to draw attention to the policy itself, as Jennifer Parrish did a few minutes ago. As I read through Directive 4492, I could not help but feel like I had been transported back a decade to when DOC was making promises about their new unit, ESH, which was an alternative to punitive segregation. That unit was so dysfunctional and abused over the years that it has been in operation that it became one of many warehouses for people DOC felt were problems to which they had no better solution. It did not work. It did not work, so much so that it led to a restrictive housing rulemaking process that lasted years and was then negated with emergency executive orders. ESH placement criteria was murky and abused. It reads like SMU criteria, which, by the way, was not as clear as DOC stated today when I read the policy. Placement hearings in ESH were not meaningful. They looked like SMU hearings. There was no limit on how long people could be there, just like SMU. There was no reliable criteria for leaving the unit, even murkier than the placement criteria. So in sum, there was no clarity on getting in, no clarity on getting out. Half the out-of-cell time is general population, and just like these reports of SMU, none of it reliably functioned. This is a Groundhog's Day moment. The testimony from the person in custody that our colleagues read moments ago said it well. These units, despite their names, are at their core the same. We know how it will go. And it does not appear that we are learning the lessons about restrictive housing in this agency that the last decade has attempted to teach us. I have heard no indication of any reasonable plans to address the things that made those units not work, that the rulemaking reform sought to address. It is warehousing people that you think are problems in restricted settings. It is not the answer. It did not work before, and it isn't right. We ask that the board prioritize a public report about SMU, as it did for ESH and young adult ESH in 2016 and 2017. We ask that you continue to go to SMU regularly, and we ask that if you see that DOC continues to struggle with implementing basic functioning and services in SMU, you call for exclosure. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Eileen Marr. Our next speaker is Danielle Gerard.
Can you all hear me?
Yes.
Is that a yes?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. My name is Danielle Gerard. I'm a senior staff attorney at Children's Rights. Solitary confinement is torture. That's why the New York City Council passed Local Law 42 twice, once over the mayor's veto. Any method of isolation not in compliance with Local Law 42 is punitive segregation and tantamount to torture for all incarcerated persons, especially for youth up to age 25. Yet the Department of Correction has gone ahead and developed yet another euphemistically named solitary confinement unit. Children's Rights support the testimony of the advocates who have addressed the specifics of what's wrong with SMU. Clearly, there is no one in charge at City Hall. Our fellow New Yorkers on Rikers are suffering and continue to die. Until a new mayor is ensconced, the Department of Correction should be triply sure to act within the scope of the law, even if undermined by Mayor Adams and his staff leaving the sinking ship. Locking young people in their cells for hours a day and limiting their access to visitation and participation in programming is wholly counterproductive for older youth who need developmentally appropriate services and connections with community. Older youth up to age 25 should always have 14 hours a day of out-of-cell time in accordance with Local Law 42 and the minimum standards regulating lock-in time in non-restrictive housing. The department must take meaningful steps to fulfill the stated mission of the Young Adult Plan to provide all young adults in custody with comprehensive, individualized, outcome-oriented jail and community-based services in safe environments. Every day, young adults must receive Local Law 42's prescribed 7 hours of programming in a group setting and 1 hour of recreation. In the absence of leadership from City Hall, the department must stop going rogue, whether regarding overcrowding or the Special Management Unit, and do an infinitely better job of following the law. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our last speaker is Carolyn Mosley.
Oh, hello?
Hi.
Okay, my mic is there. Hi, good afternoon. My name is Carolyn Mosley. I'm calling on behalf of my fiance who's incarcerated at Rikers Island. The previous issue that I have is with sick call. My fiance has glaucoma. He had it when he came in. He has a court order to get surgery on his eye. Nobody's addressed it. I've done everything that I was told to do, 311. He's been doing that. I just exhausted every avenue that I can do. So when I hear Mr. Sanders and Mrs. Young speak about sick call, he's been waiting. They haven't called him to go to Bellevue. He has an asthma condition. They addressed that. That was great because he almost died there. And now he can't navigate the system because he can't see. I would like for someone to really look at the people who need the assistance as far as sick call is concerned. I put in grievance, he's put in grievance. I've emailed the commissioner, the warden. I've done everything, and I've been dealing with this since November. Okay, so I would like for somebody to take it into consideration. He doesn't have long, his sight is gone in one eye and eventually it'll go to the other eye. So I don't know, what do I do from there? And that's really all I have to say. I mean, the health of a person who's incarcerated and in custody is very important. I love him. I don't want him to be blind or become even blind in both eyes because of neglect. Thank you, and I appreciate this forum because you guys really need to know what's going on with inmates that can't speak for themselves.
Ms. Mosley, have you called the BOC hotline?
I have, sir.
Okay.
I have done everything. I actually work for HAT. I know protocol at Bellevue. I know protocol as far as sick call and 311, and I've done everything. I have over 50 emails to the commissioner, to the warden of the jail. So I've done everything and above that to get this addressed.
Okay, could you please send it to BOC, your documents, so that we can follow up on your concern for your fiance?
I would appreciate that. I thank you so much, and I want you to know that just because you may have done anything in your life, you still should have adequate health care, you know, regardless if you're incarcerated or walking the streets, you know, and thank you for the forum. I do appreciate it. And I will be on this forum every month because it's informative. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay, that currently ends our public comments. We'll adjourn the meeting. I thank you to everyone who attended and participated in today's meeting. The board's next meeting is scheduled to take place on Tuesday, May 13th, 2025 at 1 p.m. I'll take a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Without hearing any objection, the meeting is now adjourned.
No.